Ever wonder what it truly meant to be a young woman in the Middle Ages? Prepare to be shocked. Have you ever imagined a world where a 12-year-old girl could be considered a bride? Today, we're going to uncover the brutal truth behind medieval weddings. A truth far more disturbing than any fairy tale. Forget the romantic notions of knights and damsels. The reality was often a stark and terrifying contrast. We're talking about girls barely into their teens, thrust into marriages that were less about love and more about power, land, and political maneuvering. Think about it. A child bride, her life irrevocably altered on her wedding night. This wasn't some rare occurrence. This was the lived experience for countless women. Their innocence stolen, their futures dictated by forces beyond their control. And the impact, it reverberated through generations, shaping the very fabric of society. Now, you might assume that wealth offered protection, a shield against such harsh realities. But you'd be wrong. For noble families, the stakes were even higher. A single wedding could decide the fate of entire kingdoms, the bride a mere pawn in a deadly game of political chess. Her happiness, her well-being, utterly insignificant compared to the grand ambitions of kings and queens. This isn't just history. It's a story of resilience, of survival against unimaginable odds. It's a story that challenges our perceptions and forces us to confront the darker aspects of our shared past. We'll delve deeper into the complexities of medieval marriage in the next video, exploring the reasons behind this shocking practice and the lasting legacy it left behind. Don't miss it. Subscribe now to join us on this journey into the past. Subscribe now to join us on this journey into the past. Imagine a world where childhood, as we know it, didn't exist. A world where 6-year-olds were brides. Have you ever wondered what that truly meant? Today, we're going to uncover the shocking realities of medieval marriages. Stories that will leave you breathless. We'll start with the chilling truth. Girls weren't children. They were assets. Their worth, their ability to bear children. The moment they showed signs of maturity, they were thrust onto the marriage market. Their futures decided before they even understood the concept of love. Take Margaret Beaufort, married at 6 to John Diol. Her marriage, thankfully unconsummated, was just the beginning. For marriages later, at 13, she gave birth to Henry VIII. The ordeal nearly killed her, leaving her infertile. And yet, Margaret was lucky, incredibly lucky, because for many young medieval brides, their wedding day was a death sentence. Maternal mortality rates were catastrophic. 1 in 3 women died giving birth. Think about that for a second. 1 in 3 is a statistic that would shock us to our core today. Consider Isabella of Valois, married to Richard II of England at just 6 years old. A pawn in a political game, her value was purely strategic. Her life, her body, a bargaining chip in a treaty between nations. Their stories, their fates, a stark reminder of a brutal past. But their stories are far from over. We've only just begun to scratch the surface. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the complexities and cruelties of medieval life. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the complexities and cruelties of medieval life. Imagine a world where an 11-year-old girl becomes a widow, instantly tossed back into a brutal game of political chess. That was the reality for Isabella after Richard II's demise. Have you ever wondered what a medieval wedding truly looked like? Today, we're going to uncover the shocking truth behind these lavish ceremonies. You might be surprised to learn that love had very little to do with it. These weren't romantic affairs. They were power plays, meticulously orchestrated displays of wealth and influence. The bride and groom? Mere pawns in a larger game. Picture this. The bride, adorned in silks and jewels, a walking testament to her family's prosperity. It wasn't about her happiness. It was about projecting their status, their connections, their power. Every thread, every gem whispered a silent story of political alliances and financial clout. The wedding wasn't a spontaneous celebration. It was a meticulously planned transaction, months, even years in the making. Forget romantic vows. The real contract was a legally binding document, a business merger on a grand scale. It detailed everything: land, titles, even the unfortunate possibility of a bride failing to produce a male heir. Think of it as a medieval prenuptial agreement, but with far more dire consequences. The church, its blessing was merely a stamp of approval, a religious veneer on a purely political arrangement. This was a world where love took a backseat to power, and marriage was a strategic maneuver, not a fairy tale. This was a world where love took a backseat to power, and marriage was a strategic maneuver, not a fairy tale. Imagine, if you will, a chilling contrast to the romantic ideals we hold dear today. Have you ever wondered what truly happened behind the closed doors of medieval castles on a wedding night? Today, we're going to uncover a brutal truth hidden beneath the veneer of tradition. It wasn't just the start of a union. It was often a young girl's terrifying initiation into a life of unimaginable suffering. Medieval texts, chillingly matter-of-fact, expose a horrifying acceptance of what we'd call sexual assault. These weren't isolated incidents. They were tragically common. Young brides, barely women, were thrust into the arms of their husbands with no preparation, no understanding, no consent. The very idea of consent as we know it was alien. A wife was her husband's property, body and soul. Resistance, it was met with brutal force. Many medieval marriages, in essence, were consummated through rape. Think about that for a moment. Husbandly advice manuals of the time, if you can even call them, that detail how to break in a young wife. The language is violent, raw, and sickening. Medical texts of the era, they're filled with descriptions of injuries sustained by new brides, injuries that paint a gruesome picture of the violence they endured. Think broken bones, lacerations, the sheer physical trauma inflicted. One woman's story stands out, a chilling testament to this brutal reality. Agnes Potton, a woman of some standing in 15th century England, wrote letters detailing the abuse she witnessed and suffered. In one account, a 14-year-old bride was so horrifically injured on her wedding night that she needed weeks of medical care. Her injuries were so severe, her survival and her ability to bear children, her sole purpose in that society, was in doubt. This was the grim reality for countless women. Their lives, their bodies utterly controlled, their suffering systematically ignored. Their lives, their bodies utterly controlled, their suffering systematically ignored. Imagine a life traded like livestock, a future bartered away before it even began. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman in the medieval world? Today, we're going to uncover a harsh reality, a truth hidden beneath the romantic tales of knights and castles. It wasn't a fairy tale. This wasn't just about a lack of rights. It was about a complete disregard for their well-being. A young girl, barely a woman, ripped from her home, handed over like a possession. Her family, they'd already collected their payment, a political alliance, a hefty sum of gold. The deal was sealed. Her suffering, suddenly someone else's problem. The psychological scars were as deep as any physical wound. Picture this. A child, thrust into a marriage with a stranger, facing violence, isolation, with no hope of escape. The trauma, often lifelong. A silent scream trapped within a fragile body. Medieval medicine, helpless against the crushing weight of despair. Many never recovered, their lives stolen by a system that valued them less than livestock. But the horror didn't end on the wedding night. It was a relentless cycle. Pregnancy, childbirth, and the constant threat of death. Bear a son, they demanded. Again and again. No rest, no consideration for her body, ravaged by constant pregnancies. Family planning, a foreign concept. The pressure was suffocating. Fail to produce a male heir and face the consequences. Anne of Cleves, though slightly later, provides a chilling glimpse into this fate. Her marriage annulled, her life spared only by luck, unlike so many others who weren't so fortunate. And even pregnancy offered no respite. The birthing bed, a battlefield where women fought for their lives, often losing. The birthing bed, a battlefield where women fought for their lives, often losing. Imagine that, a fight for survival every time a child was born. Have you ever wondered what life was truly like for women in the Middle Ages? Today, we're going to uncover a brutal reality, one far removed from the romanticized images often portrayed. Medieval childbirth wasn't just difficult. It was a lottery. Midwives, bless their hearts, often lacked the knowledge to save lives. Hygiene? Forget about it. The result? Death rates that would shock us today. Even wealthy women, with their fancy food and fancy helpers, faced incredible risks. Think of Blanche of Castile, Queen of France. 12 children, a testament to her strength, a symbol of royal power. But each pregnancy was a gamble, each birth a potential death sentence. Years bled into a cycle of pregnancy, recovery, and the agonizing loss of infants. For every Blanche, countless others vanished, their stories lost to time except for a cold entry in a dusty church record. These weren't just sad events. They were expected. A woman's death in childbirth? A common occurrence, almost normal. The sheer number of women who died is staggering. And their children, they inherited a cruel fate. Half of them wouldn't see adulthood. A chilling statistic reflecting the harsh realities of the time. Those who survived, girls especially, were often married off young, trapped in the same brutal cycle of pregnancy, childbirth, and loss. Their lives defined not by their dreams, but by their reproductive potential and the political games of their husbands and families. Their hopes, their aspirations buried under the weight of societal expectations. A life where survival was the greatest achievement, and motherhood, a constant struggle against the odds. A life where survival was the greatest achievement, and motherhood, a constant struggle against the odds. Imagine, if you will, a world where your very existence hinges on the whims of a man. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be utterly powerless? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval womanhood. The law, far from protecting them, actively imprisoned women within the confines of marriage. It was a cage built not of iron bars, but of legal statutes. Own property? Impossible. Sign a contract? Forget it. Leave a husband? A fantasy reserved for the elite. Divorce? A mythical creature, rarely sighted, and almost exclusively within the grasp of powerful men. Abuse? Neglect? Abandonment? These weren't crimes. They were simply the unfortunate realities of a life lived under a man's thumb. There was no escape. The church, the supposed moral compass of the age, preached the sanctity of marriage, a sacrament unbreakable, a cage unopenable. The concept of domestic violence? Non-existent. A husband's right to discipline his wife was enshrined, not in love, but in law. The line between a loving tap and a brutal beating? Left entirely to his interpretation. They even had rules, believe it or not, rules dictating the acceptable size of the stick a man could use to beat his wife. The rule of thumb, a chilling legacy of a time when women were less than human. This wasn't about love. It was about land, power, and money. Marriages were strategic alliances, pawns moved on a chessboard of political maneuvering. Families sacrificed everything for a suitable dowry, knowing that a meager offering meant a life of spinsterhood or a union far beneath their daughter's social standing. Daughters were commodities, their worth measured in acres and gold. Their voices, lost in the deafening roar of patriarchal power. Their dreams, crushed under the weight of expectation. Their lives, a constant battle for survival against a system designed to keep them down. A constant battle for survival against a system designed to keep them down. But how did that system actually work? What were the brutal realities faced by women in the medieval world? Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a young woman with little power? Today, we're going to uncover the hidden stories of medieval marriages, stories of exploitation masked as tradition. The pressure to find a husband wasn't just social. It was economic. A dowry, a woman's financial contribution to the marriage, was her ticket to security. But for many families, the cost of a suitable dowry was crippling. So what happened? Some families, desperate to avoid financial ruin, sent their daughters to convents. A life of prayer was preferable to a life of potential misery. But for those who did marry, the realities were often harsh. A meager dowry meant mistreatment, viewed as a burden, not a partner. Conversely, a substantial dowry made them a target, attracting fortune hunters who cared only for her wealth, not her well-being. And then there's the age gap, a chilling detail often overlooked. Imagine a young girl, barely a woman, betrothed to a man old enough to be her grandfather. This wasn't a quirk. It was a deliberate strategy. Older, wealthier men secured their position and legacy through these unions. Think of Isabella of Valois, just 6 years old, married to the 29-year-old Richard II. A 23-year age difference wasn't just a gap in maturity. It was a chasm of power. It shaped her entire life, coloring every interaction, every moment. When the marriage was finally consummated years later, how could she possibly comprehend a relationship built on equality? And the cycle continued. Widowhood offered a brief respite, a flicker of independence. But for young widows, especially those with wealth or influence, this freedom was short-lived. They became pawns again, quickly remarried to serve new political or economic agendas. Their lives, their choices, constantly dictated by a system that valued them not as individuals, but as commodities. Ever wonder how the fairy tales we love actually shaped our world? We've all heard of happily ever after. But what if I told you the truth was far darker? Their lives, their choices, constantly dictated by a system that valued them not as individuals, but as commodities. This wasn't just about individual suffering. It warped entire societies. Imagine a world where women were legally possessions, their worth measured in land and lineage, not in dreams or aspirations. Children, mere bargaining chips in a ruthless game of power. This wasn't some distant, forgotten past. It was the foundation of medieval culture. The violence, the abuse woven into the very fabric of marriage. It seeped into everything. Literature, laws, religion. all twisted to reflect and reinforce this brutal reality. Think of those classic knightly romances, all shining armor and courtly love. Beautiful, isn't it? But look closer. The idealized love always exists outside of marriage. Why? Because real marriages were often horrific. A stark contrast to the idyllic fantasies. The church, the supposed bastion of compassion and love, their role was far more complicated, even contradictory. While preaching kindness, they twisted biblical teachings to justify women's subjugation. Submission, duty, these were the cornerstones of a holy union, not mutual respect. Wedding ceremonies themselves were a chilling testament. They weren't celebrations of love, but legal transactions. The woman, handed over like property, her voice, her desires, utterly irrelevant. It wasn't just one thing, one evil act. It was the brutal intersection of multiple forces, patriarchal power, religious dogma, and societal norms, all converging to create a system of oppression. And the echoes of that system, believe it or not, still resonate today. We'll explore how in the next video. But first, prepare to be shocked. Medieval weddings weren't the romantic fairy tale you might imagine. Have you ever wondered what really happened behind the velvet curtains of a medieval wedding? Today, we're going to uncover a dark secret, a brutal reality hidden beneath the surface of history. It wasn't just about exchanging vows. It was a battlefield of power, where young girls were pawns in a game far older than they were. Imagine a life where your entire future was decided before you even knew what love meant. That was the chilling reality for countless medieval brides. Picture this. A child bride, barely a woman, thrust into a marriage dictated by land ownership, political alliances, and the cold calculus of family fortunes. Economic hardship forced many families into these unions. They had no other choice. And the physical danger? Unthinkable. This wasn't a few isolated cases. This was the norm. The system itself was designed to exploit and control women. Their voices were silenced, their rights stripped away, their bodies and lives treated as commodities. The power dynamics were so skewed that resistance was almost impossible. It was built into the very fabric of their society. This brutal legacy didn't vanish with the Middle Ages. The legal frameworks, the ingrained attitudes, they lingered, casting long shadows on the rights of women for centuries. Even today, we see echoes of these injustices in societal attitudes and inequalities. These weren't just names in a dusty history book. They were vibrant young lives, full of dreams, hopes, and fears, brutally extinguished by a system that valued them only for their reproductive capacity. Their stories, silenced for too long, deserve to be heard. Their suffering serves as a powerful lesson, a chilling reminder of how easily human rights can be trampled underfoot, and a stark warning that vigilance is the only shield against the return of such darkness. We must never forget. We must never forget. The echoes of the past still whisper in the shadows of the present. Have you ever wondered what truly happened behind those medieval castle walls? After the celebratory fanfare faded, today we're going to uncover a hidden chapter, a chilling truth about the brutal reality of medieval marriage. You might be surprised to learn that the happily ever after was often a cruel deception, a masked horror show playing out in the privacy of the marital bed. The wedding night, a supposed celebration of love, was for many young girls a descent into a nightmare. Imagine a 12-year-old, barely a woman, thrust into the arms of a stranger, perhaps a man twice her age, a man who viewed her not as a partner, but as property. These weren't romantic unions. They were transactions, brutal power plays disguised as sacred vows. There was no concept of consent, no understanding of bodily autonomy. Medieval law afforded the husband absolute dominion over his wife's body. Her age, her wishes, her physical or emotional well-being, these were irrelevant. His right was absolute, unquestioned. The very idea of marital rape was foreign, a concept utterly absent from their legal and social framework. This wasn't just about physical violation. It was about systematic oppression, the crushing weight of patriarchal power. These young brides were robbed of their childhood, their agency, their very selves, their voices silenced, their experiences erased. Understanding this dark history isn't about dwelling on the past. It's about recognizing the insidious ways power imbalances can manifest, even today. It's a stark reminder that the fight for equality, for the rights of women and children, is a constant, ongoing struggle. A battle that demands our unwavering attention and relentless commitment. We must remain vigilant, because the echoes of that medieval brutality, though quieter, still resonate in our world. We must remain vigilant, because the echoes of that medieval brutality, though quieter, still resonate in our world. Ever wondered what happily ever after truly meant in the Middle Ages? It's a chilling story, one that challenges our modern notions of love and marriage. Today, we're going to uncover a dark side of history, a reality far removed from the fairy tale romances we're used to. The church, the supposed guardian of morality, actually sanctioned a system that often left women utterly vulnerable. Think of conjugal duty, a phrase that sounds innocent enough, right? But in the medieval context, it became a weapon, especially for girls forced into marriage, sold off like livestock by families desperate for money or land. Imagine the terror of a child bride, her body violated, her innocence stolen. Scant medical records, the few fragments we have, whisper tales of horrific injuries we'd instantly recognize today as the brutal marks of sexual assault. The wedding feast, a supposed celebration, often became a grotesque spectacle of male dominance. Crude jokes about the bride's virginity, the public display of her deflowering, it was all considered perfectly normal. Imagine the humiliation, the sheer terror, the bloodied sheets displayed as proof of consummation, a trophy of male conquest. It's stomach-churning to even contemplate. Medieval marriage contracts? They weren't love letters, they were business transactions. The bride's value was calculated in acres, livestock, and cold hard cash. Her worth entirely dependent on her ability to bear sons, to produce heirs. Barren, destitute, and disgraced. Only daughters? Abandonment, or worse, accusations of witchcraft loomed. Her life? A constant, suffocating surveillance. Her autonomy stripped away. The medieval woman's existence was a stark reminder that power, in its most brutal form, often dictated the terms of love and marriage. The medieval woman's existence was a stark reminder that power, in its most brutal form, often dictated the terms of love and marriage. But just how brutal was it? Really? Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman in that era? Today, we're going to uncover a reality far harsher than any fairy tale. Imagine a life where your husband held absolute legal control. He could strike you legally, mind you, as long as he didn't kill you outright. The rule of thumb, a chilling testament to this grim reality, allegedly dictated the maximum size of the weapon he could use. This wasn't a rare occurrence. It was commonplace, accepted, almost expected. Your entire existence was legally bound to his. No property, no contracts, no freedom of movement. You were trapped, a prisoner in your own home, your life dictated by a man's whims, and the pressure to bear children, relentless. Pregnancy was a constant, terrifying threat. Medieval medicine was primitive, childbirth deadly. 1 in 3 women perished giving life, a staggering statistic that paints a horrific picture. Those who survived faced a lifetime of pain, repeated pregnancies, miscarriages, the agonizing loss of infants. Children, not cherished family, but economic assets, tiny cogs in a system demanding male heirs. Failure to produce sons brought shame and further hardship. The church, far from offering solace, amplified the suffering. Women were deemed inherently sinful, tainted by Eve's original sin. Marriage, not a union of love, but a necessary evil, a cage to contain female sexuality, a tool to ensure legitimate offspring. Priests, the supposed guardians of morality, advised wives to endure beatings, even rape, as penance for their perceived wickedness. Escape, impossible. Divorce was non-existent. Fleeing an abusive marriage meant excommunication, social ruin, utter isolation. The psychological scars of these lives were deep, often unseen, rarely recorded. But the silence doesn't erase the pain. It speaks volumes about the pervasive brutality of a system that dehumanized half its population. Imagine a world where your very existence is defined by your womb. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be utterly powerless, your voice silenced, your body a commodity? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval marriage, a system that wasn't just unfair, it was brutal. It speaks volumes about the pervasive brutality of a system that dehumanized half its population. The whispers in letters, the cries in diaries, they paint a horrifying picture. Noble women, educated, articulate, yet trapped in a cycle of forced pregnancies, their pleas for death echoing through the centuries. They weren't just wives. They were breeding machines, their worth measured solely by their reproductive capacity. The very idea of love, of companionship within marriage, was a dangerous fantasy, a threat to the established order. These women weren't simply victims of circumstance. They were victims of a system designed to keep them silent. Laws existed, yes, but they were toothless tigers. Consent? A mere formality easily twisted, bought, or outright fabricated. A terrified yes under duress was legally binding, a mockery of justice. The church, the supposed guardian of morality, was complicit. Male-dominated courts, steeped in the same misogynistic beliefs, offered little to no protection. Harsh punishments, rare. Meaningful consequences for abusers, almost unheard of. And the economics, even more brutal. Dowries, women paying men for the privilege of marriage, essentially buying their own enslavement. Everything a woman owned vanished into her husband's coffers upon marriage. Widows, a meager inheritance, snatched away if they dared to remarry. Financial dependence became a weapon, a cage from which escape was nearly impossible. The wedding ceremony itself, a stark ritual of ownership, the bride handed over like a prized possession, her fate sealed with a single gesture. This wasn't just marriage. It was a systematic stripping away of humanity. This wasn't just marriage. It was a systematic stripping away of humanity. Imagine, if you will, a life predetermined. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to have no say in your own destiny? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind medieval marriage, a truth far removed from the fairy tales we've been told. It wasn't about happily ever after. Legal vows bound women to obedience, their very bodies marked by the ring, a symbol not of love, but ownership. Picture this. The bride, carried across the threshold, not a romantic gesture, but a symbolic capture, a taking of a prisoner. Their lives, a relentless cycle dictated by others. From father's control to husbands, there was no escape, no breath of independence. Childhood melted into forced marriage, followed by years of relentless pregnancies and backbreaking labor. And at the end, a lonely widowhood, entirely dependent on the charity of male relatives. The very concept of equal partnership was unheard of, considered a dangerous heresy. This wasn't accidental cruelty. It was the system working precisely as intended. Power, wealth, lineage, these were the driving forces, not love. Men maintained their dominance, families exchanged assets, and patriarchal bloodlines continued. Women, they were mere casualties, reduced to their reproductive capacity and tireless work. The romantic ideals of chivalry and courtly love, those were confined to literature enjoyed only by a privileged few. For the vast majority, it was legalized captivity, a life sentence ending only with death. And this brutal legacy, it didn't vanish with the Middle Ages, cast a long, dark shadow, shaping the world we inherit today. It cast a long, dark shadow, shaping the world we inherit today. But what exactly is that shadow? Have you ever wondered about the hidden history behind the seemingly simple act of marriage? Today, we're going to uncover a truth so shocking, it might rewrite your understanding of the past. We often romanticize the medieval period, picturing knights and castles. But the reality for women was far harsher. Marriage wasn't a fairy tale. It was a legal prison. This wasn't just about societal norms. It was about the cold, hard reality of the law. Under the brutal doctrine of coverture, a woman's legal identity vanished the moment she said, "I do." Poof, gone, absorbed, as if she never existed. Think about it. No property rights, no contracts, no control over her own earnings. Everything she owned, everything she earned, became her husband's. Her life, her very being, reduced to the status of his possessions, his livestock, his land, his wife. It was a systematic stripping away of her personhood, a legal erasure that left her utterly vulnerable. This wasn't a subtle inequality. It was a complete legal death. And this wasn't an isolated incident. This was the accepted legal framework across Europe for centuries. The medieval wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was the formal commencement of a woman's enslavement. The medieval wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was the formal commencement of a woman's enslavement. Imagine that. A chilling reality, isn't it? Have you ever wondered what happened behind those castle walls after the vows were exchanged? Today, we're going to uncover the brutal truth about medieval marriage. It wasn't romantic. It was transactional. This wasn't just about hearts and flowers. It was a legal transaction, a transfer of property. A young girl, sometimes barely a teenager, was handed over like a prized possession. Her father trading her away for land, influence, or cold, hard cash. Think about that for a moment, the complete obliteration of her identity. That wedding night, it wasn't a honeymoon. It was often the first brutal encounter with a power imbalance so severe, so absolute, it's hard to comprehend. There was no such thing as marital rape in medieval law. A husband held absolute dominion over his wife's body. Her desires, her pain, her very existence, completely disregarded. Medieval society's understanding of female anatomy was shockingly flawed. Women were seen as imperfect men, their bodies a mystery, their pain dismissed. Medical texts reveal a horrifying lack of knowledge and empathy. Pain during intimacy, perfectly normal, even encouraged. It was believed to somehow improve the chances of bearing a son. Can you even begin to fathom the sheer terror, the complete vulnerability? Countless young women entered this union with no knowledge, no protection, and no escape. Their bodies, their lives, utterly at the mercy of a system that valued them only as possessions. The wedding bed? For many, it became a symbol not of love, but of enduring suffering. For many, it became a symbol not of love, but of enduring suffering. A suffering amplified by the brutal expectations placed upon women in the medieval world. Imagine the pressure, the relentless pressure. Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman in medieval times? Today, we're going to uncover a hidden history, a story of immense strength and heartbreaking vulnerability. It wasn't just about knights and castles. It was a world where a woman's value was tragically tied to her womb. The relentless demand for sons, for heirs to inherit land and titles, created a terrifying reality. A woman's worth wasn't measured by her intelligence, her compassion, or her achievements. No, it was solely determined by her ability to bear children, specifically male children. Fail to produce a son, and the consequences could be devastating. Divorce, abandonment, even accusations of witchcraft, a fate worse than death in a deeply superstitious society. Desperate to conceive, countless women turned to dangerous remedies, to painful, often ineffective treatments. Their bodies became battlegrounds in this desperate struggle for survival, for acceptance, for a place in a world that valued them only for their reproductive potential. Think of Elenina of Aquitaine, a powerful queen, a woman of immense influence. Yet, even she wasn't immune. Her first marriage dissolved because of her inability to produce a male heir after 15 long years. Instantly remarried, a pawn in a game of power, her worth reduced to her reproductive capabilities. And then there's the sheer physical danger. Childbirth was a life-threatening event. Without modern medicine, without sanitation, pregnancy and delivery were often death sentences. The mortality rate was staggering. 1 in 4 women died giving birth. Those who survived faced a lifetime of near-constant pregnancy, their bodies broken, their health irrevocably damaged. The average noblewoman could expect to be pregnant almost continuously from her wedding day until death or menopause, whichever came first. A life not of choice, but of relentless, agonizing expectation. A life not of choice, but of relentless, agonizing expectation. Imagine that your entire future dictated, your very essence defined by someone else's desires. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be utterly powerless? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval marriage, a system that crushed the spirits of countless women. These weren't unions of love. They were transactions, often sealing a young woman's fate before she even understood the implications. Ripped from the familiar embrace of family, she found herself in a strange house, among strangers who eyed her with suspicion, their coldness a stark contrast to the warmth she'd left behind. No confidants, no protectors, no escape, just the suffocating weight of isolation. The emotional toll was immense. Depression, madness, common occurrences, dismissed as inherent female flaws, never attributed to the brutal reality of their lives. The church, the supposed moral compass, played a devastating role. Conveniently selective Bible verses, obedience stressed, mutual respect ignored, became the weapons of oppression. Women, inherently sinful, needing a man's iron fist to guide them. Eve's transgression, a timeless justification for control and subjugation. This wasn't just sermonized. it was ingrained. Medieval art, literature, the very fabric of society depicted women as either angelic innocents or seductive devils, never as fully realized individuals, capable, ambitious, yearning for more. This constant barrage of negative messaging cemented their powerlessness, their worth defined solely by their subservience. And the economic reality? A dowry, intended as support, became her husband's possession, a final, crushing blow to her independence. Their lives weren't their own. They were pawns in a game played by a society that refused to see them as anything more than possessions. Ever wonder why history books gloss over the truly brutal side of the past? Today, we're going to uncover a dark secret hidden within the seemingly romantic tales of medieval times. Their lives weren't their own. They were pawns in a game played by a society that refused to see them as anything more than possessions. And that game, my friends, was marriage. Imagine a world where your husband could legally beat you, where the law actually dictated the size of the stick he could use. This wasn't some isolated incident. It was the norm, the rule of thumb, a phrase we use casually today, originated from this horrifying reality. Legal texts, the very documents meant to uphold justice, actually prescribed wife-beating. But the abuse went far beyond physical blows. It was a systematic dismantling of a woman's spirit. Husbands were encouraged to treat their wives like unruly children, constantly correcting and controlling their every move. Imagine the suffocating weight of that constant surveillance, the erosion of your own self-worth. This wasn't just about individual cruelty. It was a carefully constructed system designed to maintain power. Think about inheritance. If a woman's husband died, she might inherit a portion of his wealth, but greedy male relatives often fought her for it, portraying her as an outsider, a thief trying to steal what was rightfully theirs. Widows were left destitute, vulnerable, and utterly at the mercy of a society that valued them less than nothing. This wasn't just about individual marriages. It was about controlling society. Women couldn't own property, couldn't pass on wealth. This kept power firmly in the hands of men, generation after generation. It created a cycle of oppression, where women were raised to believe their subordinate status was natural, divinely ordained. A twisted justification for centuries of suffering. The impact rippled through society. Children witnessing their mother's abuse learned a horrifying lesson. Might makes right. Violence wasn't just tolerated, it was normalized, taught as the way of the world. This legacy of brutality, this systematic oppression, shaped the very fabric of medieval society, leaving an indelible mark on the world we inhabit today. And that, my friends, is a story we can't afford to ignore. And that, my friends, is a story we can't afford to ignore. Ever wonder why certain societal norms feel so deeply ingrained? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the long shadow cast by medieval marriage. It wasn't just a different time. It was a systematic dismantling of women's autonomy, a brutal legacy that continues to haunt us. Imagine a young woman, her wedding day not a celebration, but a legal surrender. Her hopes, her dreams, crushed under the weight of a system designed to control her body, her property, her very identity. This wasn't about romantic ideals. It was about power, a power imbalance so entrenched it shaped laws, shaped culture, shaped the very fabric of society for centuries. The protection offered by marriage was a gilded cage. Husbands held absolute sway, their authority unquestioned, their control absolute. This wasn't some isolated incident. It was a pervasive reality, woven into the legal tapestry of the era. a reality that influenced everything from literature to religious doctrine. The idea of female inferiority, of the husband as absolute ruler, became a self-perpetuating cycle passed down through generations. The psychological toll was immeasurable. The scars inflicted weren't just on individual women. They were etched onto the collective consciousness. These weren't simply different customs. This was oppression on a grand scale, a systematic dehumanization that reverberates even in our modern world. We see its echoes in persistent gender inequalities, in the ongoing fight for equal rights, in the battles still being fought for women's basic humanity. So let's not romanticize the past. Let's confront the harsh realities of medieval marriage, the brutal truth that shaped our world. By acknowledging this dark chapter, we gain a crucial perspective, a deeper understanding of the journey towards gender equality, and the battles that still lie ahead. Only then can we truly appreciate how far we've come and how much further we must go. Only then can we truly appreciate how far we've come and how much further we must go. Imagine a world where your wedding day wasn't a celebration of love, but a transaction. Chilling, right? Have you ever wondered what a medieval wedding truly looked like? Today, we're diving deep into the dark side of history, uncovering the brutal reality behind those seemingly fairy tale ceremonies. You might be surprised to learn that a medieval bride's morning wasn't filled with bubbly excitement and Pinterest-perfect plans. Instead, picture a 12-year-old girl, eyes wide with fear, facing a future she never chose. No romantic proposal, no dreamy dress, just the cold, hard reality of a life predetermined by her father's deal. He'd essentially sold her, bartered her away like a prized possession, her worth calculated in gold and livestock. The bride price wasn't a symbol of commitment. It was the price tag of a lifetime of servitude. The night before the wedding, her fate was sealed, the terms of her enslavement finalized. There was no joyful anticipation, no giddy laughter with bridesmaids, just the weight of a future she couldn't escape. A future where her body and her life were no longer her own. Her wedding dress, not a symbol of beauty, but a public announcement of her husband's acquisition, a testament to his wealth and her father's success in this horrifying business transaction. This wasn't a ceremony. It was a legal transfer of ownership. We'll explore the chilling details in the next part. Imagine a world where your wedding day wasn't a celebration of love, but a public display of ownership. Have you ever wondered what a medieval wedding truly looked like? Today, we're going to uncover the dark secrets behind these seemingly sacred ceremonies. Forget romantic vows and flowing white dresses. Think jewels and silks, not as gifts of affection, but as assets, highlighting the bride's worth as a commodity, a valuable item being transferred from father to husband. It was a transaction, plain and simple. The entire ceremony was a calculated act of psychological warfare, designed to crush the bride's spirit, leaving her completely subservient. No gentle questions, no heartfelt promises of forever. Consent, a mere formality signed away by her father. Her opinion? Irrelevant. She was expected to obey, to be silent unless spoken to, a puppet on strings. Her fate sealed the moment her father inked that contract. The vows themselves were chilling. Instead of mutual respect, the bride swore unwavering obedience, absolute submission to her husband's will. Bonny and buxom in bed and at board, she pledged. A promise of constant sexual availability and tireless servitude. But the husband? No such vows of obedience. His promises were of protection and provision, painting him as the benevolent lord, and her the grateful servant. This wasn't a partnership. It was a power dynamic, stark and brutal. The symbolism was equally horrifying. The bride literally handed over a possession passed from one man to another. The wedding ring, not a symbol of love, but a brand, a mark of ownership, just like the markings on livestock. It was a chilling reminder of her status, her lack of agency. This wasn't a wedding. It was a transaction, a transfer of property. And that, my friends, is just the beginning. And that, my friends, is just the beginning. Imagine a world where a wedding wasn't a joyous celebration, but a terrifying transfer of ownership. Have you ever wondered about the dark history hidden beneath the veil of tradition? Today, we're going to uncover some chilling truths about the power dynamics woven into ancient marriage rituals. Picture this. The groom, not with gentle affection, but with a ritualistic precision, slides the ring onto each finger of the bride. Each placement, a chilling recitation, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, a divine stamp of approval on what was essentially a legal transaction. The ring, a symbol of love for us, was for them a shackle. And the ceremony, not a private affair, but a public spectacle. Witnesses weren't there to share in the couple's joy. They were there to sign away the bride's autonomy. Their presence, a chilling guarantee against any future claims of coercion, a silent complicity in her subjugation. The feast that followed was even more disturbing. While the groom boasted to his friends, his new possession a trophy in his eyes, the bride sat in silent terror. The night held a horrifying promise, the first of many unwanted, violent encounters. And the other women, instead of offering solace, they shared their own nightmare wedding nights. A twisted sisterhood forged in shared trauma, a grim testament to the normalization of abuse. The most insidious part? This horrifying ritual was cloaked in the language of sanctity, of divine blessing. The church, the very institution meant to offer comfort and guidance, sanctioned this abuse, presented it as a sacred sacrament. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a systematic, socially sanctioned violation, disguised as a celebration. It's a stark reminder that traditions, even those draped in religious reverence, can mask deeply disturbing realities. We need to understand this history to build a more just future. The fight for consent, for true equality, begins with understanding the shadows of our past. The fight for consent, for true equality, begins with understanding the shadows of our past. Imagine a world where your wedding night wasn't a celebration of love, but a ritual of subjugation. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman centuries ago? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the history of marriage. It wasn't just about societal pressure. It was about divine decree. Religious institutions often reinforced the idea that a woman's defiance was not only unacceptable but a sin against God. To fight back against a forced marriage was to risk eternal damnation. The very concept of autonomy, of owning your own life, was considered radical, rebellious, even blasphemous. And the wedding night? It wasn't a romantic union. It was a transaction, a brutal display of power. What we now recognize as rape was then considered a husband's right, a legally sanctioned act. No gentleness, no consideration for her feelings, no consent, just raw, unquestioned dominance. The proof? Bloodied sheets, paraded as trophies, as evidence of a husband's successful claim. No blood? The consequences were devastating: accusations of infidelity, annulment, public shame, and often violence. The wedding feast became a macabre spectacle, guests eagerly awaiting proof of the bride's subjugation. Their pain, their violation was the entertainment. The morning after wasn't a dawn of happiness, but the start of a life sentence. Legally, she ceased to exist as an independent person. Her possessions, her children, even her body, all belonged to her husband. She became, in the chilling language of legal scholars, a femme covert, a woman legally erased. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was the beginning of a lifetime of sanctioned abuse, a stark reminder of how far we've come and how far we still need to go. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was the beginning of a lifetime of sanctioned abuse, a stark reminder of how far we've come and how far we still need to go. Imagine a world where your very existence is legally defined by another person. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be erased? To be swallowed whole by a system that stripped you of your identity, your voice, your very self? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind a practice so normalized, it was celebrated. We're talking about marriages where the bride was not a partner but property, a legal transaction. Think about it. A woman reduced to a mere possession, unable to own land, sign a contract, or even defend herself against her own husband's cruelty. Her past life? Effectively dead, obliterated, replaced by a new identity, wholly subservient to her husband's will. Medieval texts didn't romanticize this. They described it as a death and rebirth, a brutal, complete transition. Her maiden name, a ghost of a past life. Her family, distant memories. Her burial rites, often denied. Her body, a final testament to her legal non-existence. This wasn't a union of two souls. It was a business deal, a strategic alliance. Families rejoiced not in love, but in economic gain, political power, the acquisition of a valuable asset. A woman who would bear children and manage a household. Her voice, her feelings, irrelevant, completely disregarded. The champagne flowed, the toasts echoed, but they weren't for the bride. They were for the men who had successfully negotiated the sale. For them, it was a victory. For her, it was the beginning of a silent, brutal captivity. The party celebrated a transfer of ownership, the commencement of a life of sanctioned servitude. A life where her suffering was not only tolerated, but expected. And that, my friends, is a story we need to remember. A story that forces us to confront the dark underbelly of history and the long road we've traveled to achieve even a fraction of the equality we enjoy today. A story that forces us to confront the dark underbelly of history and the long road we've traveled to achieve even a fraction of the equality we enjoy today. Imagine a world where your wedding day isn't a celebration, but the beginning of your captivity. Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman in the medieval world? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about medieval weddings, a truth far removed from the romantic ideals often portrayed in movies. The vows weren't promises of love, but chains forged in the fires of patriarchal control. A bride's life, from that moment of "I do," ceased to be her own. Her body, her mind, her very future were surrendered to a man she might barely know. This wasn't just a legal change. It was the systematic erasure of her individuality. It's terrifying to think how easily this brutal reality was disguised as something natural, something ordained by God Himself. Girls grew up believing their sole purpose was unquestioning obedience, their highest calling a life of servitude. Resistance wasn't just futile. It was a sin, a rebellion against the divine order. This insidious indoctrination started in their cradles, reinforced by every pillar of society. The church, shockingly, played a crucial, sinister part. By branding marriage a sacred sacrament, Religious leaders blessed a system that was, in essence, legalized human trafficking. They twisted scripture, claiming a wife's submission to her husband was submission to God. Her suffering, spiritually purifying. Her attempts to escape, acts of rebellion against the divine will. This wasn't a twisted exception. This was the accepted norm. The very fabric of medieval society was woven with this horrifying thread. The very fabric of medieval society was woven with this horrifying thread. Imagine a world where your wedding day wasn't a celebration, but a public execution of your freedom. Have you ever wondered what truly happened behind the fairy tale facade of medieval weddings? Today, we're going to uncover a dark secret, a truth so shocking it will change the way you think about marriage forever. We're talking about a system designed to strip women of their power, their bodies, and their very souls. Think about the bride price, not a symbol of love, but the price tag slapped on a woman's worth. It was a transaction pure and simple, a public declaration that she was now the property of her husband. The ceremony itself? A brutal display of male dominance, a ritualistic humiliation broadcast for all to see. It wasn't a walk down the aisle, but a forced march into a lifetime of servitude. This wasn't just some isolated incident. It was the law. Medieval marriage laws enshrined the idea that a husband owned his wife's body, that marital rape was unthinkable, that a woman had no say in her own destiny. These legal principles, these horrific precedents, cast a long shadow, poisoning the well of marriage for centuries to come. For hundreds of years, women were denied basic human rights within the confines of their own homes. The right to refuse sex, unheard of. Domestic violence, simply the husband exercising his supposed prerogative. It wasn't until the late 20th century that many countries finally acknowledged the reality of marital rape, the violation of a wife's bodily autonomy. Imagine the generations of women who suffered in silence, their cries for help unheard, their pleas for justice ignored. These weren't happy unions, they were legalized oppression, the systematic destruction of female autonomy. These weren't partnerships. They were acts of ownership, brutal and absolute. These young girls, forced into these sham marriages, were utterly defenseless, trapped in a system designed to silence and control them. Their lives, their futures, stolen before they even had a chance to bloom. They were the forgotten victims, sacrificed on the altar of patriarchal greed and social control. Their stories, long buried, deserve to be heard. Their stories, long buried, deserve to be heard. Imagine a world where your wedding day, a celebration of love, was actually the beginning of your enslavement. Have you ever wondered how a seemingly sacred ritual could be so utterly brutal? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind medieval weddings, a truth far darker than any fairy tale. We've shown how these weren't isolated incidents of cruelty. This wasn't just about a few bad apples. It was a system, a carefully constructed machine designed to keep women powerless. The medieval wedding wasn't merely a ceremony. It was a public declaration of a woman's subjugation. It was a ritualistic stripping away of her identity, her autonomy, her very self. Think about it. A ceremony supposedly celebrating love simultaneously crushed a woman's spirit. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Churches, institutions supposedly dedicated to holiness and compassion, actively participated in this systematic oppression. They blessed the bonds of marriage, even as those bonds chained women to a life of servitude. The language of love masked the reality of brutal control. Beautiful words, ornate rituals, all carefully crafted to conceal the violence at their core. This wasn't just about physical abuse, though that certainly played a part. It was a complete dismantling of a woman's will. It was the subtle, insidious erosion of her hopes and dreams. It was the silencing of her voice, the extinguishing of her ambitions. The wedding day marked the beginning of a lifetime of systematic control, a web of societal expectations designed to keep women trapped. Their lives, after that fateful day, were dictated by men, their bodies and their futures controlled, their potential stifled. This wasn't just the wedding night. This was a lifetime sentence. And the true horror? It was considered perfectly normal. It was considered perfectly normal. Perfectly normal, you say? Imagine a world where your very existence vanished the moment you said, I do. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to cease being a person? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the history of marriage. A truth so stark it will leave you breathless. This wasn't some dusty old law book, a quaint historical anomaly. This was the brutal reality for women for centuries. The legal doctrine of coverture didn't just limit a woman's rights. It extinguished them. It was a legal black hole swallowing whole identities. A woman became, in essence, a legal ghost. Think about it. No property rights, no voice in court, no control over her own earnings. Every possession, every penny, every inheritance she possessed instantly transferred to her husband's name. Her dreams, her aspirations, her very self, completely subsumed. Picture this. A woman, bright and capable, working tirelessly, only to see her hard-earned wages vanish into her husband's pocket. She couldn't even leave a will, dictate who inherited her meager belongings, or control her own destiny. Not even her clothes were safe from her husband's claim. Legal scholars called it femme coette, literally covered woman. She was legally invisible, a shadow clinging to her husband's form. William Blackstone, a prominent legal mind, described this chilling reality with stark precision. A woman's legal existence was suspended, as if she died. Not metaphorically, literally. The moment she uttered her vows, her legal life ended. This wasn't exaggeration. This was the law of the land, and it was accepted, without question. Without question. Imagine a world where your very existence is legally defined by another person. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be stripped of your identity, your voice, your very self? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of women's lives centuries ago. A time when the law itself was a cage, designed to confine and control. Think about it. A woman's money, earned before marriage, instantly became her husband's. He could sell her belongings, squander her inheritance, even give away her children with complete impunity. There was no escape, no legal protection. Her possessions, her future, her very body, the legal term conjugal rights didn't just sound harsh. It was a horrifying reality. Rape within marriage.
L'egalie impossible.
Why? Because a wife had no right to refuse her husband. Her physical being, her sexuality, her ability to bear children, all were completely at his disposal. It wasn't a partnership. It was ownership, pure and simple. This wasn't just about property. It was about the total erasure of a woman's personhood. This legal death extended to every facet of her life. Want to live somewhere specific? Forget it. Her husband decided. Yearn to see your family and friends? Only if he approved. Dream of working, of having a career? Impossible without his permission. Even leaving the house required his consent. Every single decision, every moment of her life, dictated by him. And the church? It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a reinforcement of this brutal system. Religious doctrine twisted scripture to justify female subjugation, painting obedience as a divine mandate. The wedding vows themselves were a legal contract of subordination, a promise to obey that carried both spiritual and legal weight. The constant barrage of religious texts hammered home the message. Women were second-class citizens, lesser beings, subservient to their husbands. This wasn't just a societal norm. It was a legally sanctioned, religiously endorsed reality. A reality that robbed women of their agency, their dignity, and their very right to exist as individuals. Imagine a world where your very name vanishes, gone, replaced. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to lose your identity, not to death, but to marriage? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the medieval wedding ring. It wasn't a symbol of romance. Not at all. It was a shackle, a brand, a public declaration of ownership. Think of a farmer marking his livestock. That ring, it was the same. A cold, hard piece of metal signifying the bride's complete subjugation. Placed on her finger, it wasn't a promise of forever, but a prison sentence. The ceremony itself was a ritual of erasure. Her maiden name, the name she'd carried since birth, vanished, replaced, swallowed whole by her husband's. Margaret, daughter of Thomas, became Margaret, wife of William. Her entire being reduced to her relationship with a man. No longer an individual, but an appendage. And this wasn't some whispered secret. This was law, enforced by both church and state. A system built on the complete denial of a woman's autonomy. Escape,
Virtually impossible.
divorce, a fantasy. Even if her husband was cruel, brutal, even violent, she was trapped. Her only recourse, silent suffering, a life stripped bare of choice, of dignity, of her very self. This wasn't just a loss of freedom. It was a systematic annihilation of her identity, a reality that stole her voice, her future, and her very right to exist. This wasn't just a loss of freedom. It was a systematic annihilation of her identity, a reality that stole her voice, her future, and her very right to exist. Imagine a life where your very existence is legally contingent on another person's will. Have you ever felt utterly powerless? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval women's lives. A world where the law itself silenced them. Those who dared to defy the suffocating constraints of their time faced brutal consequences. Court records paint a grim picture. Imprisonment, crippling fines, even physical violence. All for the audacity of owning a business or reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. The legal system was a weapon designed to keep women firmly in their assigned place. Even widowhood, a supposed escape, offered little solace. While a widow might inherit a fraction of her husband's estate, a dare right, often a meager one-third, this small crumb was fiercely contested. Hostile in-laws, viewing her as an unwelcome intruder, would wage relentless legal battles, leaving her fighting for survival. These weren't just property disputes. They were existential struggles for basic existence. The psychological toll was immeasurable. Picture a young girl growing up, knowing her legal personhood would vanish the moment she uttered her wedding vows. Her future, preordained, was a slow, legal death. This wasn't merely oppression. It was the systematic erasure of a whole gender from the legal fabric of society. This pervasive understanding shaped their self-perception, their dreams, their very being. It created a learned helplessness on a societal scale, a quiet acceptance of powerlessness born from generations of brutal suppression. Any spark of independence was promptly extinguished, leaving a legacy of silence echoing through the ages. Any spark of independence was promptly extinguished, leaving a legacy of silence echoing through the ages. But silence, my friends, can be a deceptive thing. It hides a world of whispered strategies, of cunning maneuvers played out in the shadows. Have you ever wondered how women survived, thrived even in a world designed to silence them? Today, we're going to uncover the hidden history of female resilience in the face of unimaginable legal constraints. These women, denied the simplest freedoms, became masters of manipulation. They learned to dance around the rigid rules, subtly influencing the men who held the reins of power. Think of it, a delicate game of chess played with societal expectations, where every move was calculated, every word weighed. Forget grand gestures of rebellion. Their rebellion was quieter, more insidious. Wealthy women armed with resources tried to outsmart the system. Trusts were established, legal loopholes explored, elaborate, expensive attempts to safeguard a sliver of autonomy. But the legal system, a monstrous machine built to transfer wealth from women to men, was relentless. It crushed these fragile structures, leaving women vulnerable once more. And the audacity, even crimes committed were not their own. A woman's theft became her husband's burden, her transgression his responsibility. Sounds protective, right? Wrong. This was a cage disguised as a comforting embrace. It gave husbands absolute power, transforming them into jailers, their wives into perpetual prisoners. She couldn't even be truly wicked on her own terms. Her capacity for wrongdoing, her very flaws, were absorbed into his legal identity. Imagine a life where adulthood was a concept, not a reality. Forever under the thumb of a father, then a husband, then perhaps a son. A perpetual state of legal adolescence, a never-ending cycle of dependence. The wedding ceremony? Not a celebration, but a legal transition, a formal handover from one form of captivity to another. The most chilling part? This system presented itself as protection, a benevolent shield. A cruel irony, masking a brutal reality. It was a masterful deception, one that silenced generations and continues to resonate in the echoes of history. But their stories, though hushed, are far from over. Have you ever felt utterly invisible? Like your voice, your dreams, your very existence simply didn't matter? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the past. A truth that echoes even in our modern world. Imagine a world where your wedding day wasn't a celebration of love, but the legal equivalent of signing away your soul. Where the vows weren't promises, but a surrender of your identity, your rights, your very self. This wasn't some far-off fantasy. This was the brutal reality for women for centuries. They were told that marriage was a shield, a protection from the harsh realities of life. But this protection was a cage. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. Their husbands, their owners, controlled their finances, their property, even their bodies. It wasn't partnership. It was possession. Think about the medieval wedding ceremony. The violence, the humiliation, often swept under the rug. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a lifetime of legal non-existence. The moment she said, "I do," she ceased to be a person in the eyes of the law. She became property, a possession to be managed, controlled, and ultimately owned. Her voice, silenced. Her dreams, crushed. Her very being erased. This wasn't some fleeting injustice. This legal framework persisted for hundreds of years. The insidious doctrine of coverture, which stripped women of their legal personhood, cast a long shadow across history. It wasn't fully abolished in many Western countries until the late 19th or early 20th centuries. Generations of women lived under this suffocating weight, their lives shaped by a system designed to keep them silent and subservient. The patterns of control, the ingrained subordination, it all stemmed from that moment at the altar. A moment that stole their humanity, a legacy that continues to shape our world today. We need to understand this history to truly appreciate the battles fought and the progress made, because their stories, their silenced voices, deserve to be heard. Because their stories, their silenced voices, deserve to be heard. Imagine a world where your very existence is a transaction, a legal agreement, not a life lived. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be treated as less than human, a mere possession? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval weddings, not romantic fairy tales, but brutal ceremonies that systematically erased women's identities. These weren't just celebrations. They were acts of legal ownership. A woman's entire life, from birth to death, was dictated by the men who owned her. Think about that. No autonomy, no voice, no control over your own destiny. The wedding itself was a public display, a spectacle of possession. The bride, a prized asset, was literally transferred from one man's control to another's, like a piece of property changing hands. The ceremony's language is a window into this horrific reality. The bride, voiceless, was given away, a passive object in a transaction she couldn't refuse. Her consent, unnecessary, irrelevant. She was spoken of in the third person, treated as if her thoughts and feelings held no value. The vows themselves were a stark reflection of this inequality. The bride pledged obedience, a stark contrast to the groom's simple promise to love and cherish. The asymmetry speaks volumes. But the dehumanization went even deeper. The very symbols and traditions, the rituals themselves, reinforced women's status as property. These weren't simply customs. They were tools of oppression, subtly yet powerfully shaping a society that denied women their inherent humanity. We'll explore these traditions in the next segment, revealing the shocking truth behind the smiles and the celebratory feasts. Because these weren't just weddings. They were acts of violence, slow and insidious, stripping women of their very selves. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Ever wondered why we do the things we do at weddings? Those traditions, seemingly romantic now, have some seriously dark roots. Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind some beloved wedding customs. That ring on your left hand? It wasn't always a symbol of love. Medieval folks believed a special vein, the vena amoris, connected that finger straight to the heart. But guess what? This wasn't a romantic notion. It meant the husband controlled his wife's very lifeblood, literally. Think about that for a second. And that sweet gesture of carrying the bride over the threshold? Originally, it was practical, preventing a fall, a bad omen. But in the Middle Ages, it became a symbolic act of ownership. He was carrying his new possession into his house, highlighting her complete submission. The wedding feast, a stark contrast. The groom, surrounded by his buddies, boasted and drank. Meanwhile, the bride, veiled, silent, a prize on display. Her beauty, a testament to the groom's success in negotiating with her family. Think about it, her worth was reduced to her looks, her virtue a commodity. The guests, they didn't exactly shower her with well wishes. Instead, crude jokes about the wedding night dominated the conversation. Her impending loss of innocence was public entertainment. her fear and vulnerability dismissed. In some places, things got even worse. Guests would follow the newlyweds to their room, making lewd comments, sometimes even watching. The bride's terror? Fuel for their amusement. This wasn't a celebration of love. It was a public spectacle of a woman's subjugation. These traditions weren't romantic. They were brutal. We'll explore even more shocking details next, so don't go anywhere. Imagine a world where your very existence is a transaction, a sale. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman in the medieval era? Today, we're going to uncover the brutal reality of medieval marriage, a system that wasn't about love, but about ownership. Think of it. Tears dismissed, not as pain, but as maidenly shyness. Legalized sexual assault? That was just the beginning. The medieval marriage system was built on a foundation of economic control, a chilling system where a woman's family essentially sold her. It wasn't a wedding. It was a business deal. A dowry wasn't a gift. It was the price tag on a woman's life, a payment for transferring ownership. It was a transaction, documented in excruciating detail. Contracts, like livestock agreements, meticulously listed her attributes, her fertility, her physical condition, her value. Imagine the humiliation of a physical examination, not for health care, but to assess her breeding potential, just like a horse destined for stud. Defective? Returned. Unfertile? Rejected. The woman herself was merely an asset, a commodity to be bought, sold, and even returned if deemed unsatisfactory. And the dehumanization didn't stop there. The legal system erased women completely. Coverture, a legal doctrine that stripped women of their identity, their rights. No property, no contracts, no control over her own earnings. Her husband owned everything: her body, her labor, her very thoughts. The church itself reinforced this oppression, teaching that a wife's conscience belonged to her husband. Imagine, unable to testify in court without permission, your voice silenced, your very existence defined by another. This wasn't just inequality. It was legal erasure. This was a systematic dismantling of a woman's personhood. And the shocking truth? This wasn't a secret. It was the LAW.IT was the law. The law of the land, etched in stone, or rather, in the grim realities of medieval life. Imagine it, a life where your very existence hinged on the whim of a man. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman in the Middle Ages? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth, a world far removed from our own. A world where a woman's worth was measured not by her heart, but by her obedience. Marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a legal transaction. A woman ceased to exist as an individual, her voice silenced, her property forfeit. A mere shadow mirroring her husband's desires. Need medical care? Your husband's permission was required. Want to own a single coin? Forget it. It was his world, and she was merely inhabiting it. But the cruelty didn't end with the vows. The very rituals designed to celebrate the union were often acts of brutal subjugation. Picture a new bride, paraded before the village, subjected to humiliating displays, her spirit systematically crushed. Or the chilling sound of rough music, the jeering mob outside her home, a constant reminder of her place. And then there's wife selling, not a whispered rumor, but a common practice. Women traded like livestock, their bodies auctioned off in the town square alongside farm animals. Formal sales, complete with receipts and public announcements. The shame, the indignity, unimaginable to us today. But perhaps the most chilling aspect was the sanctioned violence. Wife-beating wasn't just tolerated. It was encouraged, codified into law. The rule of thumb, a horrifyingly literal guide to acceptable spousal abuse. The church, supposedly a beacon of morality, actively condoned this barbarity, twisting scripture to justify the subjugation of women. A husband's failure to beat his wife was considered a spiritual failing. This wasn't just a patriarchal society. It was a system designed to break women, to erase them. A system that, for centuries, operated under the guise of law and order. A system that, for centuries, operated under the guise of law and order. But beneath the surface, a darker reality simmered. Imagine a world where a woman's life wasn't her own. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a wife in medieval times? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth hidden beneath the veil of tradition. It wasn't just about vows and celebrations. It was about control, isolation, and fear. Newly married women were cut off from their loved ones, their support systems ripped away. Forbidden from reading or writing, their minds were caged as surely as their bodies. Their every move monitored, many literally imprisoned in their own homes. The constant threat of violence, a chilling reality, not a mere possibility. Husbands held the power of life and death over their wives, a legal right sanctioned by the very structures of society. Escape, it was a death sentence. Attempting to leave an abusive marriage meant facing the wrath of the church, complete social ruin, and a slow, agonizing death from starvation or exposure. No support, no recourse, just utter despair. Even the wedding rituals themselves were twisted displays of power. The garter removal, public announcement of dominance. The tossed grains and petals, a subtle reminder of a woman's sole purpose, to bear children. But the cruelty went even deeper. In some regions, the groom would ceremonially shear a lock of his bride's hair, a symbolic act of ownership, a chilling claim over her very being. Think about that, a public declaration of possession. And in others, the wedding itself mimicked the brutal origins of marriage, a staged kidnapping, a reenactment of the violence that founded the institution. This wasn't romance. This was subjugation, veiled in the guise of holy matrimony. This was a system built on fear, control, and the systematic dehumanization of women. This was a system built on fear, control, and the systematic dehumanization of women. But how? How did they achieve such complete control? Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman in the medieval world? Today, we're going to delve into the chilling details. It wasn't just about physical violence. It was a meticulously crafted system. Every aspect of a medieval woman's life, from the words used to describe her, to the laws that governed her, to the expectations society placed upon her, all served to strip her of her personhood. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. This was design. The goal? To break their spirits, to extinguish their independence, to mold them into subservient figures, mere tools for male ambition. Think of the wedding ceremony itself. It wasn't a celebration of love. It was a public ritual, a ritual of transformation. It marked the symbolic death of her individual identity, her rebirth as a possession. The brutality wasn't confined to the wedding night. That was just the horrifying beginning. It extended into every single day, every single year. It was psychological torture, social isolation, legal entrapment, and spiritual oppression all rolled into one. This wasn't a fleeting moment of cruelty. It was a lifetime sentence. The wedding was merely the gateway to decades of systematic oppression. The very idea of a woman as an individual with her own thoughts, desires, and dreams was actively erased, replaced with what? The legal fiction of property. Under the suffocating doctrine of coverture, a legal concept that dominated medieval Europe, a woman ceased to exist as a person in the eyes of the law. Her identity, her very being, swallowed whole by her husband's. She was reduced to a legal cipher, existing only in relation to him. The horror wasn't just in the wedding night's brutality. It was in the endless, suffocating reality that followed. A reality where every aspect of her life was controlled, dictated, and defined by a system built to crush her. Have you ever felt completely invisible? Like your voice, your dreams, your very existence simply didn't matter? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about a time when women were legally erased. A reality where their identity, their rights, their very being were swallowed whole. Imagine a world where the words, "I do," didn't just symbolize a commitment, but a legal death sentence. A complete annihilation of your legal personhood. The moment a woman uttered those vows, she ceased to exist as an individual in the eyes of the law. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a brutal, systematic erasure. This wasn't some obscure, forgotten law. It was deeply ingrained in the legal fabric of society. The phrase "baronet femen lay," husband and wife are one, was the chilling justification. But the one was always invariably the husband. The wife, she simply vanished, absorbed, erased. This wasn't a subtle shift in power. It was a total legal obliteration. She couldn't own property, not a single thing. No land, no jewelry, nothing. Not even the clothes on her back were truly hers. Every possession, every heirloom passed down through generations, instantly became her husband's. Everything she had worked for, everything she owned since childhood, gone. Just like that. The impact was devastating. Think about it. Waking up one morning and discovering you're legally non-existent. You can't sign a contract, you can't open a bank account, you can't even sell a loaf of bread without his permission. Your body, your life, your future, all controlled, dictated, owned by another. Every decision, every aspect of your existence, utterly dependent on someone else's whim. A crushing, suffocating reality. This wasn't just oppression, it was legal annihilation. And the psychological toll? Unfathomable. Unfathomable. The sheer scale of it, the casual cruelty woven into the very fabric of society. Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained injustice can become? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the past. A truth hidden beneath layers of polite euphemisms and forgotten phrases. Imagine a world where the law not only tolerated but actively sanctioned violence against women. Not just any violence, but systematic, brutal, legally sanctioned beatings. This wasn't some dark corner of society. This was the accepted norm, codified in legal texts and preached from church pulpits. Husbands weren't just men. They were legally empowered enforcers of patriarchal dominance. Their wives, not equals, not partners, but property, chattel, subject to their whim and their fist. The details are staggering. Legal documents meticulously outlined the acceptable level of violence. A stick no thicker than a thumb. A detail that lives on in the phrase rule of thumb. A chilling legacy of a brutal past. This wasn't abuse. It was household management. Think about that for a second. Marriage manuals, written by respected clerics and legal scholars, provided detailed instructions on the proper techniques for physically correcting a wife's behavior. A woman's voice, her independence, her refusal to be a subservient servant. These were crimes punishable by blows. The church, far from condemning this violence, actively fueled it. Sermons painted women as inherently inferior, cursed by Eve's disobedience, forever prone to sin and rebellion. They were deemed the devil's gateway, requiring constant vigilance and correction by their male superiors. This wasn't a matter of individual cruelty. It was a system designed to maintain control, a system built on fear and oppression, a system that made violence against women not just acceptable but expected. And that, my friends, is a story that demands to be heard. And that, my friends, is a story that demands to be heard. A story of power, of injustice, and of a world so different from our own it's almost unimaginable. Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible chains that bind generations? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of women's lives in medieval Europe, a reality far darker than most history books portray. Imagine a world where your very existence is deemed flawed, a mere shadow of the male form. That's the legacy of thinkers like St. Thomas Aquinas, whose words, considered gospel truth, cemented women's inferiority not just socially, but scientifically and divinely. Universities, the bastions of learning, echoed this prejudice. Pulpits, the very houses of God, reinforced it. This wasn't some fringe opinion. It was the accepted order, the unshakable foundation of society. It wasn't just about social standing. It was about utter economic enslavement. A married woman? Forget owning property, signing a contract, or having any financial independence whatsoever. Picture this: a woman, her husband dies. Suddenly, she's tossed onto the streets, stripped of everything: the home she built, the business she helped nurture, the possessions she brought into the marriage. All gone. Poof. Nothing. And the cruelty goes deeper. Medieval law didn't just deny women basic rights. It stole their bodies. The concept of marital rape? Non-existent. A husband's absolute control extended to every aspect of his wife's physical being. Forced pregnancies, dangerous childbirths, these weren't tragedies. They were tools of oppression. Women were breeding machines, their lives and bodies expendable, their wishes utterly ignored. This wasn't just a historical footnote. It was systemic, brutal, and completely normalized. This was their reality, and understanding it is crucial to understanding who we are today. Imagine a life where you have no say, no freedom, no escape. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be completely controlled? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval marriage, a system designed not for love, but for absolute domination. It wasn't just about vows and commitment. It was a cage built of societal expectations and legal constraints. A woman's world shrunk to the walls of her husband's house. Stepping outside meant seeking permission, usually accompanied by a watchful eye. The sisterly bonds, the comforting presence of family, all systematically dismantled. Her loyalty, demanded completely and utterly, belonged solely to her husband and his kin. Maintaining ties with her own family? Treason. This wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Isolation was the ultimate weapon, rendering resistance practically impossible. Picture this: no money, no rights, no freedom to move, and no one to turn to. Escape? A fantasy. The legal system was a cruel joke, dragging women back to the very men who abused them, often met with even harsher punishment for daring to flee. Court documents are filled with these heartbreaking stories. Women returned to their tormentors, their attempts at freedom resulting in intensified suffering. Leaving wasn't just a personal choice. It was considered theft. She stole herself, her children, from her husband, her rightful owner. According to the law, even the sanctuary of a church or convent offered no true refuge. Husbands could claim their wives back, regardless of the horrors they faced. This wasn't just physical control. It was a complete psychological siege. Husbands dictated every detail. The food on her plate, the clothes on her back, the words she spoke, every single moment of her existence. This wasn't partnership. It was ownership, a stark reminder of the power imbalances that shaped the lives of women for centuries. And the echoes of that control, that systematic silencing, still resonate in ways we might not even realize. And the echoes of that control, that systematic silencing, still resonate in ways we might not even realize. Imagine a life lived under constant scrutiny, every move judged, every word weighed. Have you ever felt that suffocating pressure? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of medieval women's lives, a reality far more brutal and insidious than most history books portray. Think about it. A world where a woman's worth was defined solely by her obedience, where a single perceived misstep could unleash a torrent of violence, justified by law and custom. The psychological toll, the constant fear, the hypervigilance, the crushing lack of control was immense. Medieval marriage contracts weren't romantic promises. They were legal documents meticulously outlining a husband's right to inflict punishment, detailing the methods with chilling precision. This wasn't unusual. It was the norm. It was the law. These weren't isolated incidents. This was the foundation of marriage. Women entered this institution knowing their autonomy would be stripped away, their voices silenced, their very bodies subjected to another's will. They had no choice.
No escape.
The system was designed to break them, to crush their spirits, to leave them utterly powerless. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. Some women, in a desperate bid for survival, found a twisted path to a measure of security. They became collaborators, enforcers of the very system that had oppressed them. They learned to navigate the labyrinth of control, to play the game by its rules, often at the expense of other women. They taught their daughters to accept subjugation, to see submission as the only way to avoid the brutal consequences of defiance. This wasn't collaboration. It was survival, a horrific cycle of learned helplessness. And even death offered no reprieve. Her body, her children, her possessions, all became the property of her husband. Even in the grave, she remained under his dominion. This wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a systemic oppression, a chilling testament to the power imbalance that defined medieval society. It's a story we need to remember, not just to understand the past, but to ensure such horrors are never repeated. It's a story we need to remember, not just to understand the past, but to ensure such horrors are never repeated. Imagine a life where your every breath, every decision was dictated by another. Have you ever wondered about the chilling reality of medieval marriage? Today, we're going to uncover a truth far darker than fairy tales. It wasn't a romantic union, a partnership of equals. It was a legal cage, meticulously crafted to strip women of their identity. A woman couldn't even choose her own burial place, leave a note for her children, all at the whim of her husband. This wasn't some isolated incident. It was systemic. The entire structure, the ceremonies, the laws, all designed to crush a woman's spirit, to silence her voice, to turn her into a possession. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. This was the bedrock of medieval society. a foundation built on the complete subjugation of women. Think about it. Feudalism, patriarchal control, all depended on this brutal system. By reducing women to legal nonentities, men ensured power, wealth, and authority remained firmly in their grasp, passed down through generations. They learned to see women not as human beings, but as property, as tools. And this wasn't some fringe horror story. This was the norm, the expected standard, the carefully maintained mechanism that kept the medieval world ticking. The chilling part? This wasn't a relic of a distant past. These attitudes, these legal frameworks, lingered for centuries, leaving an insidious stain on the cultures that followed. The echoes of this oppression resonate even today, a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained these patterns of thinking can become. We must understand this legacy to truly break free. We must understand this legacy to truly break free. Imagine a world where your life isn't your own. Every breath, every choice dictated by someone else. Have you ever wondered what that feels like? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the past. A truth that still whispers in the shadows of our present. It wasn't just about money, power, or land. Medieval life was a brutal tapestry woven with threads of control, extending to the very core of human intimacy. Think about marriage, a supposed sanctuary, but in those times, it was often a cage, a legal contract sealing a woman's fate. Her body, her will, her very existence, subject to the whims of a man. This wasn't just some isolated incident. It was the accepted order, divinely ordained, legally enforced. The church, the law, the entire system colluded to maintain this brutal hierarchy. And the peasants? They weren't slaves in the traditional sense, not bought and sold like cattle. The reality? Prison without walls. Forced labor on the Lord's land, not for wages, but as a duty, often cruelly timed to coincide with the crucial seasons for their own meager harvests. Their survival was deliberately sacrificed for the Lord's gain. The legal system, rigged in the Lord's favor, ensured that any challenge was swiftly crushed. Their voices, their needs, silenced by the weight of a system designed to keep them down. This isn't ancient history. It's a stark warning, a testament to the enduring fight for equality and freedom. This isn't ancient history. It's a stark warning, a testament to the enduring fight for equality and freedom. Ever wonder how easily control can be wielded? How seemingly small injustices can build into a mountain of oppression? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of a system designed not just to exploit, but to break the human spirit. Imagine a world where a stray chicken could bankrupt you, where a single missed day of work, because you were sick, could mean starvation for your family. A daughter's choice in a husband, a death sentence financially. These weren't accidental flaws. They were the very foundation of feudal society, a carefully constructed system of control built on the backs of the poor. This wasn't about resource scarcity. It was about manufactured scarcity. Vast forests, teeming with game, were declared the exclusive hunting grounds of the nobility. Starving peasants, risking their lives to trap a rabbit, faced a brutal punishment: death. Imagine the agonizing choice. Let your children starve or face certain execution. Fish-filled ponds sat untouched, while villages nearby withered from hunger. The message was chillingly clear. Even nature itself belonged to the elite.
Humans.
Just another resource to be exploited. The psychological impact was devastating. The constant, gnawing knowledge that your labor enriched others while your family went hungry. The terrifying possibility that your daughter could be taken. Your son forced into a war for someone else's glory. This wasn't poverty. It was systematic dehumanization. It was a calculated campaign to crush hope, to extinguish the very spark of rebellion. But even in the darkest corners, the human spirit endures. In the face of unimaginable hardship, families shared their meager rations. Neighbors helped each other, recognizing their shared fate, understanding that survival depended on unity. Village festivals, religious celebrations, these weren't just events. They were lifelines, brief respites from the relentless grind, moments of shared humanity that refused to be extinguished. These were acts of defiance, quiet rebellions against a system built on despair. They're a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, hope, community, and the enduring human spirit can still thrive. Ever wonder how the world we know came to be? Today, we're going to uncover a hidden history, a story etched not in glorious battlefields, but in the quiet resilience of ordinary people. They're a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, hope, community, and the enduring human spirit can still thrive. Imagine a world where your life is predetermined, where your worth is measured by your servitude. For generations, medieval peasants lived under the iron fist of a feudal system, a system designed to strip them of their dignity, their knowledge, even their very identity. They were born into a life of backbreaking labor, their days dictated by the whims of their lords. Education was a privilege reserved for the elite, a dangerous seed of rebellion stifled before it could sprout. The church, far from offering solace, reinforced the brutal status quo, painting their suffering as God's will, silencing dissent with the weight of divine authority. These weren't just nameless faces in dusty history books. Their unpaid toil built the magnificent castles that now draw tourists from around the globe. Those breathtaking cathedrals, those stunning works of art, all funded by the silent sacrifice of countless individuals. Every stone, every brushstroke, a testament to their unseen contribution, their stolen potential. Think about that. The very structures that embody power and elegance were erected on a foundation of exploitation. But their story isn't just one of suffering. It's a story of quiet resistance, a testament to the incredible strength of the human spirit. Their legacy lives on, woven into the fabric of our modern world, in the independent spirit of rural communities, in the healthy skepticism of authority that echoes through folklore and tradition. They taught us that dignity isn't granted. It's earned, fiercely protected, and shared. Survival, they showed us, often hinges not on the promises of the powerful, but on the unbreakable bonds of community. Their victories might have been small, their rebellion whispered, but their refusal to be broken resonates through the centuries, a powerful anthem of human endurance. Their victories might have been small, their rebellion whispered, but their refusal to be broken resonates through the centuries, a powerful anthem of human endurance. But the fight for equality wasn't just on the battlefield. It was waged in the quiet corners of daily life, a battle fought with whispered defiance and stolen moments of freedom. Imagine a world where your very existence is legally erased the moment you say, "I do." Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman in the medieval world? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling reality, a systematic dismantling of female identity so complete, it's almost incomprehensible. The medieval legal system, a machine built by men, for men, crushed women beneath its weight. It wasn't just about marriage. It was a complete legal erasure. The concept of coverture, a Latin term meaning covered, reduced women to shadows, their legal personhood swallowed whole by their husbands. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a brutal reality. A woman, stripped of her legal identity, couldn't own land, sign a contract, or even leave a will. Her possessions, her inheritance, everything she owned, became her husband's to control, to squander, to destroy. A woman who was independent one day could wake up penniless the next, with no legal recourse, no voice to protest. The psychological impact. Imagine the crushing weight of non-existence, of having every aspect of your life, where you lived, what you ate, who you spoke to, dictated by another. Medieval legal texts chillingly described women as perpetual minors, forever children in the eyes of the law, regardless of their age, intelligence, or accomplishments. Their voices, their dreams, their very selves, silenced by a system designed to keep them powerless. This wasn't just injustice. It was the systematic dehumanization of half the population. And understanding this dark chapter is crucial to understanding the ongoing fight for true equality. And understanding this dark chapter is crucial to understanding the ongoing fight for true equality. Imagine this: a 40-year-old woman, a woman with a lifetime of wisdom and experience, deemed legally less capable than her 15-year-old son. Mind-blowing, right? Have you ever wondered how such a blatant injustice could exist? Today, we're going to uncover the shocking truth about the legal oppression of women throughout history. It wasn't just a matter of unequal pay or limited opportunities. The system itself was designed to subjugate women, to strip them of their rights and their dignity. Domestic violence wasn't a crime. It was considered acceptable. The rule of thumb, a chilling phrase we still hear today, wasn't a figure of speech. It was a legal precedent, a license for men to physically assault their wives with impunity. This wasn't about discipline. It was about control. Legal documents of the time routinely compared wives to children, servants, mere possessions, beings requiring physical correction to maintain the supposed order of things. The church, unfortunately, played a significant role in this horrifying narrative. Religious doctrine painted women as inherently flawed, weak, and dangerously susceptible to temptation. Conveniently selected biblical verses were twisted to justify this systematic oppression, while messages of love and compassion were conveniently ignored. The story of Eve, forever cast as the temptress, became the ultimate justification for every single restriction placed upon women. It was as if every woman carried the weight of original sin, requiring constant male surveillance to prevent societal collapse. The cruelty extended to property laws, stripping women of their financial independence. A woman's husband died, her inheritance gone, passed on to his male relatives, his sons. She might receive a meager dare, a third of the income at best. But even this pittance could be challenged, taken away. Women who toiled alongside their husbands for decades, building a family's wealth, were suddenly left destitute, reliant on the charity of male relatives who often saw them as nothing more than a burden. This wasn't just about the past. The echoes of this injustice resonate even today. This wasn't just about the past. The echoes of this injustice resonate even today. Imagine a world where your voice holds no weight, your experience is dismissed, your very existence deemed less valuable. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be utterly powerless? Today, we're diving into the chilling reality of medieval women's lives, a reality shaped by laws that were not just unfair, but actively cruel. Picture this: a woman violated, her body and spirit broken, but instead of justice, she faced a legal system that saw her not as a victim, but as damaged property. The rapist wasn't punished for his crime. Her father or husband received compensation. Think about that for a second. The very act of violence became a transaction, a way to acquire a wife, a chilling perversion of justice. And if she was unmarried, forced marriage to her attacker, her life, her future stolen, her worth reduced to nothing more than her sexual availability. It wasn't just rape. It was systemic dehumanization. The courts? They were closed doors. Her testimony? Worthless. Her voice? Silenced. She was a ghost in her own life, existing only through the eyes of men. The suffocating grip of this injustice extended beyond the courtroom. The guilds, the very foundations of medieval economic life, were male bastions. Imagine aspiring to be a brewer, a weaver, a skilled artisan, only to be barred from the guilds that controlled your opportunities. Even in trades traditionally done by women, men usurped control as profit grew. They were systematically shut out, their potential stifled, their contributions erased. This wasn't just about individual acts of cruelty. It was a carefully constructed system designed to keep women down, to maintain the power imbalance. It's a story we must remember, a lesson we must learn, to ensure that the echoes of this injustice finally fall silent. It's a story we must remember, a lesson we must learn, to ensure that the echoes of this injustice finally fall silent. But how did we get here? Have you ever wondered about the silent screams of history? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the medieval world. A world where women were systematically silenced and stripped of their basic human rights. Imagine a life where your worth is determined by your ability to bear children and obey a man. That was the harsh reality for countless women. They toiled endlessly in backbreaking labor, cleaning houses, selling goods on the streets, or forced into lives of desperation. There was no escape, no safety net, no financial independence outside the confines of marriage. Their economic future was entirely dependent on a man's whim. Education, a luxury beyond their reach. While some privileged women might receive a rudimentary education, the vast majority were denied knowledge, deliberately kept in the dark. Why? Because knowledge in the hands of a woman was deemed dangerous, a threat to the established male order. Universities were strictly male domains, shutting women out from the professions that could have empowered them. Law, medicine, theology, the very fields that define their oppression. And the brutality of marriage? It extended far beyond the vows. Husbands wielded absolute power over their wives' bodies. The very concept of marital rape didn't exist. A woman's consent was irrelevant. Her body was her husband's to command, regardless of her health, her exhaustion, or her own desires. Pregnancy,
No excuse.
illness,
No reprieve.
the marriage contract was a lifetime of enforced sexual servitude, with no possibility of escape. Childbirth, already a life-threatening ordeal in those times, became even more perilous. Women had no control over their reproductive lives, forced to bear child after child until their bodies broke. And if tragedy struck during childbirth, the life of the child always took precedence. The mother was expendable. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a systematic dehumanization, a deliberate silencing of half the population. We must never forget their stories. We must continue to fight for a future where such injustices are unthinkable. We must continue to fight for a future where such injustices are unthinkable. But how did we even get here? Imagine a world where your very existence is defined by ownership. Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman in a time when your body, your life, even your death weren't your own? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the brutal realities faced by women centuries ago. a truth far more terrifying than any fairy tale. If a woman died in childbirth, it wasn't a tragedy. It was a judgment, a divine punishment for hidden sins, a secret wickedness only she could bear the blame for. Dare to challenge the system? Escape a violent marriage? That was theft. Theft of your very self, your labor, your ability to bear children, all stolen from your owner. The price of defiance? Public humiliation. The sting of the whip, the cold stone of a prison cell, or the suffocating walls of a convent. Branding, mutilation, permanent scars marking you as a runaway, forever chained to your fate. And for the ultimate act of rebellion, killing an abusive husband, a fate far worse than death awaited. It wasn't murder, it was petty treason. The punishment, not a swift hanging, but the agonizing, terrifying death by fire. This wasn't just isolated cruelty. It was systematic. The Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of witches, wasn't a work of fiction. It was a legal manual, a twisted guidebook, steeped in misogyny, that laid out the rules for identifying, torturing, and executing women accused of witchcraft. Innocent women were broken on the wheel of unimaginable pain, forced to confess to crimes they never committed, all fueled by the baseless belief in women's inherent weakness and wickedness. This wasn't just a dark chapter in history. It's a chilling reminder of the lengths to which power can go to control, to silence, to destroy. And we must never forget it. And we must never forget it, because the echoes of those dark times still resonate today. Have you ever wondered why certain power structures persist? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling ways misogyny shaped history, using the witch hunts as a terrifying example. It wasn't just about burning women at the stake. It was a systematic dismantling of female power. Think about it. Women who knew their herbs, who healed, who spoke their minds, they were seen as a threat. A threat to the established order, a threat to male authority. Their knowledge, their independence, their very existence challenged the patriarchal narrative. Fear became the weapon. The threat of accusation hung over every woman, a constant reminder to stay silent, to obey, to conform. It was psychological warfare on a grand scale, a society gripped by terror, where even the slightest deviation from the norm could lead to unimaginable horror. And when things went wrong, when crops failed, when illness spread, who was to blame? Not the failing systems, not the flawed leadership. No, the convenient scapegoat was always at hand. The woman. She became the embodiment of everything that went wrong, a vessel for societal anxieties. The cruelty was meticulously calculated. The swimming test, a grotesque parody of justice, condemned women whether they lived or died. The pricking, a violation both physical and sexual, designed to break their spirits and extract confessions. Sleepless nights, starvation, relentless psychological torment, all used to shatter their will and force false admissions of guilt. The courts were rigged. Hearsay was evidence. Tortured confessions were truth. Denials were proof of guilt. It was a system built on lies designed to ensure conviction. Women couldn't even find adequate legal representation. Defending them was deemed complicity in the devil's work. Even survival didn't guarantee freedom. The stigma of accusation, the social ostracism, the shattered lives, these were punishments that lingered long after the flames died down. The witch hunts weren't just about burning women. They were about breaking them, silencing them, and maintaining a brutal, unjust power structure. And understanding that history is vital to building a better future. and understanding that history is vital to building a better future. Imagine a world where accusations could destroy your life, your family, everything you owned. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to live under that kind of constant fear? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling chapter of history, a time when suspicion could lead to the complete dismantling of a woman's existence. We're talking about the witch hunts, but not just the executions. We're diving deep into the insidious, systematic oppression that warped entire lives and generations. They weren't just burned at the stake. They were systematically targeted. Their communities turned their backs, branding them outcasts, leaving families shattered and future prospects stolen. Daughters couldn't find husbands. Sons couldn't find work. A whole lineage condemned to poverty and social isolation. This wasn't just about individuals. It was a calculated campaign of terror, designed to keep all women in line. And it wasn't just about fear. It was about greed. Picture this. A woman, widowed, inherits her husband's land, his wealth. Suddenly, she becomes a target, her assets seen as ripe for the taking. The witch hunt wasn't simply a religious purge. It was often a cleverly disguised land grab, a legalized theft operating under the veil of piety. Entire regions turned witch hunting into a system, a brutal economic machine that preyed on the vulnerable. But the damage extended far beyond stolen property. The psychological impact was devastating. Imagine growing up constantly told you were inherently flawed, sinful, your desires shameful, your very thoughts untrustworthy. Every decision questioned, every instinct condemned. This wasn't a few isolated incidents. It was a constant barrage of indoctrination, shaping their self-perception, their belief in their own worth. Religious teachings, instead of offering solace, reinforced this crippling narrative. Childbirth, a natural process, became a punishment, their subjugation divinely ordained. Their only path to redemption, absolute obedience and total submission. This was a systematic dismantling of the female spirit, a cultural and spiritual genocide. And understanding this dark past is crucial if we are to build a future free from such oppression. And understanding this dark past is crucial if we are to build a future free from such oppression. Imagine a world where a woman's worth was measured solely by her obedience. Have you ever wondered what it truly meant to be a woman in the medieval era? Today, we're going to uncover a story of systematic subjugation, a chilling reality hidden beneath the surface of history. The few women celebrated as saints, often martyrs, victims of unimaginable cruelty, or they were figures who had essentially erased themselves, renouncing all earthly desires. The message was brutally clear. A good woman was either dead or invisible. This wasn't simply a matter of societal expectation. It was a carefully constructed system. Legal and social structures ensured women's economic dependency, trapping them in cycles of abuse. No property rights, no independent income, no education, their choices were severely limited. Marriage and the protection or control of a man became their only viable path. Even women who saw the injustice, who understood their oppression, found escape nearly impossible. Those few who managed to gain some financial independence, perhaps through trade or inheritance, became targets. Forced marriages, legal battles, accusations of witchcraft, the system was designed to crush any hint of rebellion. And then there's the medical aspect, a horrifying layer of this oppression. Medieval medicine viewed women as inherently flawed, their bodies deemed inferior copies of the male form. Menstruation, proof of inherent corruption. Pregnancy, an illness. Childbirth, a necessary evil. Medical texts painted a picture of women as cold and weak, while men were hot and strong. This led to treatments that were often far more damaging than any illness. The lack of female doctors meant women's health concerns were routinely ignored or misunderstood. Male physicians, if they even deigned to treat a woman, often relied on religious dogma rather than medical knowledge. Imagine suffering from depression, anxiety, or trauma, only to be diagnosed with hysteria and subjected to treatments that ranged from pointless to downright cruel. This wasn't just a lack of understanding. It was a deliberate silencing, a systematic suppression of female voices and experiences. This is the legacy we must confront. This is the legacy we must confront. A legacy built on silence, on the systematic erasure of women's voices and experiences. Have you ever wondered how deeply the past shapes our present? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth, a story woven through centuries of oppression, a story that continues to resonate in our own time. It's a story about power, control, and the insidious ways in which societal norms can inflict lasting trauma. For centuries, women were treated not as individuals, but as commodities. Their bodies, their minds, their very lives were controlled by men. The medieval era wasn't some dark age of accidental cruelty. It was a meticulously designed system. Think about it. Laws, religion, even the social fabric itself, all conspired to keep women subservient. This wasn't about ignorance. It was a calculated strategy to maintain power. Imagine a world where your voice holds no weight, where your suffering is dismissed as natural, where your very existence is defined by your relationship to a man. That was the reality for women throughout the Middle Ages. Marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a legal transaction, transferring ownership from father to husband. Violence wasn't a crime. It was often expected, even condoned. The legal systems, crafted by intelligent minds, not only tolerated this brutality but actively reinforced it. Religious doctrine, far from offering solace, often served as a justification for women's subjugation. This wasn't just about physical abuse. It was about the systematic dismantling of a woman's spirit, the erosion of her self-worth, the insidious normalization of her oppression. Generations endured this, internalizing the belief that their suffering was inevitable, that their worth was contingent upon the approval of men. The echoes of this systematic dehumanization reverberate through history, shaping societal attitudes and influencing laws even today. The fight for equality isn't just about achieving equal pay or breaking glass ceilings. It's about dismantling the deeply ingrained cultural attitudes that still whisper the lies of the past. It's a fight to reclaim the narrative, to rewrite the story, and to ensure that the legacy of medieval oppression never again silences the voices of women. Ever wonder why the fight for equality feels so uphill? It's not just about today's battles. Today, we're going to uncover the shocking truth about how centuries of oppression built the very ground we stand on. It's a fight to reclaim the narrative, to rewrite the story, and to ensure that the legacy of medieval oppression never again silences the voices of women. But that silence wasn't accidental. It was meticulously crafted. Imagine a world where laws dictated your worth, your voice, your very existence. That wasn't some distant, hazy past. It was the meticulously designed reality of medieval women. The idea that a woman's pain is inconsequential, that her opinions are irrelevant, that wasn't a natural state of affairs. It was a carefully constructed cage, built brick by brick, over generations. The progress we've seen is breathtaking, a monumental leap against unimaginable odds. Yet, the echoes of those medieval structures still resonate. We see them in the insidious resistance to equality today, in the subtle biases, the ingrained assumptions. These aren't just modern problems. They're the direct descendants of medieval legal codes, of centuries of systematic dehumanization. The suffering inflicted on medieval women wasn't a tragic accident. It was a deliberate strategy. It wasn't about harsh times. It was about power, concentrating wealth, controlling reproduction, creating an army of unpaid workers. This was a calculated exploitation, a brutal system designed to benefit a select few at the expense of countless others. Think about it. Every woman who defied that system, even in the smallest act of rebellion, showed incredible courage. Every mother protecting her children, every woman seeking knowledge, every voice raised against injustice was a direct challenge to a civilization built to break her spirit. Their resilience, their quiet defiance, is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a spark that continues to ignite the flames of change today. And that's a legacy worth remembering, worth fighting for. And that's a legacy worth remembering, worth fighting for. But how did we get here? How did a society built on supposed love and faith become a breeding ground for such brutality? Have you ever wondered where some of our everyday phrases come from? Today, we're going to uncover a dark secret hidden within the seemingly innocent rule of thumb. You might be surprised to learn that it's a chilling testament to a horrifyingly normalized practice. We often picture the Middle Ages as a time of chivalry and romance, but the reality for women was often far bleaker. Medieval marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a legally sanctioned system of oppression. Forget romantic ideals, the reality was brutal. Husbands held absolute power, their authority backed by the law, the church, and societal norms. Physical violence wasn't just tolerated. It was mandated. Think about that for a second. The law actually gave husbands the right to beat their wives. It wasn't a matter of anger. It was a prescribed method of control, codified in legal documents with detailed instructions on how to inflict pain effectively. The thickness of a thumb? That wasn't a limit. It was a guideline. This wasn't considered domestic violence. It was, unbelievably, proper household management. The church, instead of offering solace and protection, actively fueled the flames of this abuse. Biblical passages were twisted and manipulated to justify the subjugation of women, emphasizing obedience while conveniently ignoring messages of love and compassion. Sermons didn't preach forgiveness. They preached the right to beat your wife into submission. A husband failing to physically discipline his wife was seen as failing God, failing his family, and failing his duty. Can you even imagine the terror such a belief system instilled? The sheer normalization of violence? It's a chilling reminder of how easily societal norms can legitimize the unthinkable. It's a chilling reminder of how easily societal norms can legitimize the unthinkable. Imagine a world where a husband could legally beat his wife for anything. A burnt dinner? A misplaced word? Have you ever wondered how such blatant injustice became accepted as the norm? Today, we're going to uncover the horrifying reality of medieval marital violence, a darkness woven into the very fabric of society. Medieval courts, bastions of supposed justice, handed down rulings that would make our modern sensibilities recoil in horror. A man's fist was the ultimate arbitrator in his household. Court records overflow with cases, not isolated incidents, but a relentless stream of women seeking refuge only to be sent back to their tormentors. These weren't isolated incidents of rage, but a systemic legal framework built on the subjugation of women. Picture this: a woman living in perpetual fear, Every word, every movement, measured against the unpredictable whims of her husband. The constant threat of violence, a shadow hanging over her every breath. This wasn't just physical abuse. It was a slow, agonizing erosion of the spirit. It created a cycle of learned helplessness, a deep-seated belief that the violence was deserved, that she was somehow responsible for triggering her own suffering. And the isolation. Imagine a world without support. No escape, no safe haven. Families often turned their backs, viewing domestic abuse as a private matter, a shameful secret to be hidden. Monasteries and convents offered a glimmer of hope, but access was restricted, requiring the very man inflicting the violence to grant permission. Even the medical profession played a disturbing role, legitimizing the abuse through the bizarre theory of the wandering womb. A woman's hysteria, her very emotions, were blamed on a misplaced organ, and the cure? More violence, more brutality. It's a terrifying glimpse into a world where the systems designed to protect actively condoned the abuse of half its population. A chilling testament to the power of ingrained societal beliefs to normalize the unimaginable. A chilling testament to the power of ingrained societal beliefs to normalize the unimaginable. But the horror didn't stop there. Imagine a world where your own body, your most fundamental right to self-determination, is legally owned by another. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to live under such oppressive dominion? Today, we're going to uncover the brutal reality of medieval marriage, a reality far darker than most of us can comprehend. It wasn't just the physical violence, the sanctioned beatings deemed therapeutic by the very doctors sworn to heal. The sexual abuse was systemic, pervasive, a horrifying consequence of a culture that stripped women of their agency. The concept of marital rape? Non-existent. A husband's access to his wife's body was absolute, unconditional. Illness, pregnancy, postpartum recovery, none of it mattered. Refusal was met with brutal punishment, a transgression against both law and God. And the cruelty went even deeper. The complete lack of understanding of women's bodies fueled this abuse. Menstruation, a natural process, was twisted into a toxic state needing purification through sex. This medical myth provided a perverse justification for forced intimacy, layering guilt and shame onto women who dared to resist. The pressure to bear sons, to constantly produce heirs, added another layer of unimaginable torment. Failure to conceive or the repeated birth of daughters brought not only physical violence but social ruin. Divorce, abandonment, ostracism. These were the consequences of a woman's biological shortcomings. The legal system itself reflected this profound misogyny. Damage another man's property, even his wife, and you faced legal repercussions. But a husband assaulting his wife? Perfectly legal. This was not simply violence. It was the systematic dehumanization of an entire gender, a brutal reality hidden beneath the romanticized veneer of history. We're only just beginning to scratch the surface of this dark chapter, and what we uncover will leave you speechless. We're only just beginning to scratch the surface of this dark chapter, and what we uncover will leave you speechless. Imagine a world where showing your wife too much kindness could land you in legal trouble. Unbelievable, right? Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained misogyny could be? Today, we're going to delve into a chilling era where a husband's violence against his wife was barely punished, often excused, sometimes even celebrated. The law unbelievably sided with the abuser. A man who murdered his wife faced far less severe consequences than a man who killed a stranger. Think about that for a moment. His wife's life, her very existence, held less value. Worse still, if he could claim she'd been disobedient or unfaithful, a flimsy excuse, often fabricated, he might walk free. This wasn't just about physical brutality, though the stories are horrifying. Accounts of husbands taming their wives with savage beatings circulated freely, presented as examples of strong male leadership. These weren't whispered secrets. They were proudly shared narratives, reinforcing a culture of violence. But the cruelty went deeper than mere fists. The psychological manipulation was equally insidious. Husbands learned a terrifying technique, alternating between brutality and affection. This created trauma bonds, powerful emotional connections forged in fear and pain. These bonds made it nearly impossible for women to recognize the abuse, let alone seek help. It was a vicious cycle, a trap expertly laid. This constant oscillation between violence and false tenderness kept women trapped, emotionally dependent on their abusers, their self-worth shattered, their agency stolen. The impact wasn't limited to individual homes. It poisoned society. Women's humanity was denied, their pain dismissed, their suffering deemed necessary to maintain male dominance. This wasn't a series of unfortunate events. This was a deliberate, meticulously designed system, a calculated plan to break women's spirits, to crush their independence, to ensure their complete subjugation. And the chilling truth is, the echoes of this system still resonate today. Imagine a world where your very identity vanishes the moment you say, "I do." Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained societal norms impact our relationships? Today, we're going to uncover a hidden chapter of history, a chapter that reveals how medieval law actively erased women's existence. We've seen the beatings, the psychological warfare, the systematic oppression. But the ultimate horror? The law itself became the weapon. It wasn't just inequality. It was annihilation. The doctrine of coverture, a legal nightmare spanning medieval Europe, didn't merely shift a woman's allegiance from her family to her husband. It obliterated her legal personhood. She ceased to exist, legally speaking, swallowed whole by her husband's identity. Think about it. No right to own property, no right to her own earnings, no legal standing to defend herself against abuse. Her voice, her will, her very self legally silenced. This wasn't a simple power imbalance. It was a meticulously crafted system designed to control, to dominate, to erase. This wasn't some unfortunate byproduct of a less enlightened era. It was a deliberate, calculated strategy of subjugation, woven into the very fabric of society. And the consequences, they continue to shape our understanding of marriage, of consent, of power dynamics, even today. This legal erasure wasn't a mere historical footnote. It's a foundational crack in the very structure of gender equality. We're only beginning to understand the full extent of its legacy. Imagine a world where your voice, your very being, vanished the second you said, "I do." Chilling, right? Have you ever wondered what it meant to be a woman under such a system? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling reality of coverture, a legal nightmare that stripped women of their identity. It wasn't a figure of speech. It was legal annihilation. Marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a legal death sentence for a woman's individuality. Suddenly, she ceased to exist as a person in the eyes of the law, reduced to a mere appendage of her husband, a fam. Her existence completely absorbed into his. This wasn't some dusty, forgotten law. Profoundly impacted every aspect of a woman's life. Owning property. Forget it. Signing a contract? Impossible without her husband's permission. Suing someone? A laughable notion. Even the most basic right, the right to write a will, was denied. Her own possessions, her clothes, her jewelry, everything belonged to him. Absolutely everything. Think about the financial devastation. A woman inheriting a fortune? It instantly became her husband's. He could squander it on reckless gambling, lavish gifts for others, anything he pleased, while she, the rightful owner, was powerless to stop him. Countless stories echo through history. Women who entered marriage with vast wealth, only to find themselves penniless and at his mercy. He could even sell her family's heirloom jewelry, her childhood home, without her consent. Her legal existence was erased, leaving her vulnerable and voiceless. The psychological impact was devastating. To grow up knowing your very selfhood would be extinguished upon marriage, to have your thoughts, your aspirations, your desires rendered legally irrelevant. It's a horrifying thought, isn't it? This wasn't just about property. It was about the systematic erasure of women from society, a profound silencing that reverberates through history. And the scars of that silence? They're still with us today. They're still with us today. In the shadows of history, their voices whisper. Ever wondered what it felt like to vanish? To cease to exist? Legally speaking, the moment you said, "I do"? Have you ever considered the chilling reality of a woman's life in the medieval world? Today, we're going to uncover a truth so profound, it will shake you to your core. It's a tale of legal erasure, a systematic stripping away of identity, leaving women as mere shadows in their own lives. Imagine your very existence, your rights, your voice, swallowed whole by the institution of marriage. Not just a loss of independence, but a legal death. Worse than death, some might argue, because death grants a memory, a legacy. But these women, they were expected to erase themselves, to forget who they once were. Their past selves, buried under the weight of societal expectations. Picture a woman, unable to seek help for a sickness without her husband's permission, trapped within the confines of her home, her world shrinking to the size of her courtyard. The decisions that shaped her children's lives, their futures, completely out of her hands. Every aspect of her daily existence, controlled, dictated by a man. Even the simplest choices, what to wear, what to eat, required his consent. It wasn't just about social norms. It was the law. The church, a pillar of society, amplified this suppression. Religious teachings painted a woman's submission as a divine mandate, not a social construct. Sermons thundered, reinforcing the message: question your husband, question God. The wedding vows themselves, a solemn promise of obedience, a legal contract sealing her fate, a fate that robbed her of her voice, her agency, her very self. These women, silenced, yet their stories, though buried, still echo through time. These women, silenced, yet their stories, though buried, still echo through time. Did you ever imagine a world where the law itself actively conspired against half the population? Today, we're going to uncover a dark chapter of history, a legal system designed not to protect, but to control. Imagine a world where a woman's mind was deemed too fragile for business, yet she secretly ran thriving family enterprises. Legal scholars, the supposed guardians of justice, spun elaborate theories about women's supposed natural incapacity, conveniently overlooking their obvious competence. This wasn't a simple oversight, it was a deliberate strategy. The law created dependence, then used that very dependence as proof of women's inferiority. This wasn't just an abstract legal concept. It was a brutal reality. Mothers were legally powerless over their own children, unable to shield them from abuse. They couldn't ensure a proper education, couldn't shape their sons' views on women, or build a secure future for their families. They were trapped generation after generation in a cycle of powerlessness. Even when facing horrific abuse, the legal system offered no escape. A husband's right to discipline his wife was enshrined in law, with an impossibly high bar for what constituted excessive violence. Women who dared to flee abusive homes could be forcibly returned, and anyone who helped them faced harsh punishment. A wife's body, considered her husband's property. Protecting property rights, you see, trumped protecting human lives. The economic consequences were devastating. Total dependence on a husband's whims, with no legal recourse, no path to independence. Their very existence hinged on the goodwill of men. This wasn't just injustice. It was systemic oppression, meticulously crafted and ruthlessly enforced. And the chilling part? It lasted for centuries. It lasted for centuries. A chilling legacy, wouldn't you agree? Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained societal structures can control entire populations? Today, we're going to uncover the brutal reality of a system built on economic dependence and psychological manipulation. Imagine a world where a husband could starve his family, gamble away their future, and face no punishment. That wasn't some dark fantasy. It was the lived reality for countless women. Laws, deliberately crafted, ensured their vulnerability. Women were systematically barred from owning property, running businesses, or even controlling their own earnings. A few exceptions existed, tiny cracks in a wall of oppression, easily sealed shut by the whims of men. This wasn't simply about poverty. It was about power. Keeping women financially reliant guaranteed their obedience. Think about the subtle yet devastating psychological warfare waged against them. From their earliest years, girls were indoctrinated, taught their worth was solely in pleasing men and bearing children. Independence? Unnatural, sinful, even morally corrupt. Education became a weapon. Girls were trained for domestic servitude, denied the knowledge and skills that could lead to self-sufficiency. Literacy, numeracy, those were luxuries reserved for men. And then the church, a supposed bastion of morality, amplified the message. Religious texts were twisted, Eve's story reinterpreted as a justification for female subservience. Women were depicted as inherently weak, easily tempted, a constant threat to male virtue. This wasn't just about controlling women. It was about creating a system where their subjugation felt divinely ordained, inevitable, and just. The consequences: generations trapped in a cycle of dependence, a cycle that lasted far too long. Generations trapped in a cycle of dependence, a cycle that lasted far too long. But how long? How deeply did this twisted system burrow into the very fabric of society? Have you ever wondered about the silent screams of history? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about the past. A truth that echoes in ways we might not even realize. Imagine a world where half the population was legally erased, their voices silenced, their dreams crushed under the weight of unjust laws. These weren't isolated incidents. We're talking about a systematic dismantling of women's rights, a deliberate effort to strip them of their power. Picture a woman bravely trying to run a small business, only to be thrown into prison for daring to exceed her legal authority. Or another, fleeing a violent marriage, only to be dragged back, her defiance met with even harsher brutality. This wasn't just about individual cases. It was about the relentless crushing of any spark of independence. Even those who accepted this grim reality found themselves trapped in an agonizing paradox. They were expected to be pillars of morality, the keepers of their families' souls, yet utterly powerless to shape their own destinies. They were supposed to be wise advisors, yet their opinions held no legal weight. They nurtured their children, yet possessed no legal say in their upbringing. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a societal cancer. When half the population is legally defined as less than human, it poisons everything. It normalizes oppression, justifies violence, and creates a culture where cruelty becomes commonplace. It warps our understanding of what it means to be human, to have dignity, to have worth. But the consequences extended beyond the women themselves. The men of these times were also deeply affected, though the scars were different. They were raised to see women as objects, as possessions, not as partners, equals. This twisted view stunted their capacity for genuine connection, for real intimacy, leaving them as emotionally impoverished as those they dominated. The legacy of this legal nullification continues to haunt us, a shadow stretching across generations, reminding us of the urgent need for justice, equality, and a world where every voice is heard. Ever wondered why history feels so unbalanced? Like a giant seesaw tipped heavily to one side? Today, we're going to uncover the shocking truth behind a system of oppression so complete, so insidious, it erased women from the very fabric of society. We've talked about the shadows of the past, the chilling legacy of legal nullification. But it wasn't just about laws, it was about a mindset. A twisted belief system that prioritized dominance over love, control over connection. Imagine a world where a man's worth was measured by his power, his ability to command, not by his compassion. That's the world these men inhabited. And the children raised in this climate, they absorbed it like a poison, seeping into their very bones. Boys learned that women were possessions, not partners. Girls, they learned their fate was predetermined, legal oblivion. Resistance, futile. Every story, every religious teaching, every interaction reinforced this brutal reality. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some unfortunate byproduct of a less civilized era. This was a carefully constructed machine of oppression, designed to maintain male power and female subjugation. The marriage ceremony? Oh, the public display of this legal erasure. But the true horror wasn't the ceremony itself, the rituals, the symbolic violence. The real terror was the law that underpinned it all. A law that could wipe a woman's existence from the record books, while pretending to offer protection. That could steal a woman's autonomy, claiming it was for her own good. That could justify brutality, cloaking it in the language of love and divine mandate. This wasn't just about medieval marriage. It was about a worldview that permeated every aspect of life. It was a systematic dismantling of female identity, a legal and cultural annihilation. Understanding this deep-seated legal framework is key to comprehending the pervasive nature of female oppression. It helps us see how thoroughly, how completely women were erased, not just from history, but from existence itself. And that, my friends, is a legacy we must confront. And that, my friends, is a legacy we must confront. A legacy built not on love, but on legal annihilation. Have you ever wondered how a single ceremony could erase a person's identity? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind medieval weddings. You might be surprised to learn it wasn't about romance. It was about control. It wasn't just about physical violence, though the accounts are horrifying. It was a systematic dismantling of a woman's very being. Imagine a life where your voice held no legal weight, your property instantly transferred to your husband, your very existence defined solely by your marital status. That wasn't a quaint custom. It was a legal prison. Medieval law didn't just restrict women. It actively extinguished their personhood. The marriage contract wasn't a union. It was a sentence. A life sentence of legal non-existence. This wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the system's core purpose. Every ritual, every tradition, every legal loophole was meticulously designed to achieve this. The complete erasure of female autonomy. The public bedding, the brutal physical acts, these weren't deviations. They were essential components of the process. They were the terrifyingly effective tools used to enforce this legal erasure. It wasn't a matter of societal norms. It was a legal, systematic eradication of female humanity. Think about that for a moment. The very act designed to symbolize love was a tool of oppression. This wasn't a matter of individual cruelty. It was a meticulously crafted system designed to strip women of their rights, their dignity, and their very essence as human beings. We must understand this history, not to dwell in the darkness, but to illuminate the path towards true equality, because the echoes of this brutal past still resonate in our present. The fight for true equality is a fight against this legacy. Let's never forget. Let's never forget. Because forgetting is how these horrors repeat. Imagine a world where your 12th birthday isn't a celebration, but a sentence. A life sentence. Have you ever wondered what it means to own a person? To buy and sell a human being like a piece of livestock? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth. A system so meticulously cruel it makes your blood run cold. Picture this. A girl, barely a woman, her future already written. A stranger's wife, a breeding machine. No say, no choice, no escape. Her body, her soul, utterly at the mercy of a man who could claim her as his property, to do with as he pleased. The brutality was shockingly efficient, a well-oiled machine of oppression. Death in childbirth? Common fate. Resistance? Met with a violence so profound it shattered everything. And the church? Instead of offering solace, it fueled the fire. Women, they preached, were inherently flawed, sinful creatures, needing constant male control to prevent the downfall of mankind. Marriage wasn't a sacred union. It was a cage designed to contain the supposedly dangerous power of women. The law, the very foundation of society, became a weapon. A woman, upon uttering her vows, ceased to exist. Poof, vanished from the legal landscape. No rights, no identity, nothing but a shadow, a femme covert, hidden, buried alive under her husband's name. A legal fiction designed to erase her very being. This wasn't just injustice. It was systematic annihilation. And it was all perfectly legal. Perfectly legal, I tell you. Can you even imagine? Have you ever wondered how easily societies can normalize horrific practices? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth about medieval marriage. A system so deeply ingrained, so utterly accepted, that it masked brutal realities as everyday life. It wasn't just about restricted opportunities. It was a systematic dismantling of a woman's very being. Think about it. No access to trades, guilds, or education. Even if they were wealthy, their inheritance was a pawn in a man's game, a political tool. Their voices, silenced. Their destinies, decided by others. The public bedding ceremony wasn't a spectacle. It was a legal act, transforming violence into a community ritual. The gifts, not tokens of affection, but receipts for a transaction in human flesh. The wedding feast, not a celebration, but a funeral for a woman's freedom. But the cruelest twist? The weaponization of love. Imagine finding genuine affection in such a system. Your love, your connection becomes another shackle. Kindness wasn't kindness. It was simply the absence of the legally permitted cruelty. A brief respite from brutality, mistaken for true partnership. This wasn't about marriage. It was about breeding. Women weren't wives. They were living incubators, their worth solely determined by their ability to produce male heirs. Their bodies, public property. Pregnancy wasn't a miracle. It was a life-threatening sentence. Constant, terrifying risk. A system designed not for love, but for control, and all of it perfectly legal. A system designed not for love, but for control, and all of it perfectly legal. Imagine a world where 1 in 3 brides didn't survive their wedding day. That wasn't some ancient myth, folks. That was reality. Have you ever wondered how a society could allow such a horrifying statistic to exist? Today, we're going to uncover the chilling truth behind a medieval system built on the systematic oppression of women. It wasn't just physical brutality. The cruelty ran far deeper, twisting minds and spirits. From the cradle, women were indoctrinated into believing their suffering was divinely ordained, a punishment for a sin committed millennia before their birth. Their pain, their subjugation, their very existence was framed as a moral imperative. Submission to men wasn't merely expected. It was their Christian duty, a sacred obligation. To even think of autonomy, of equality, was to be branded as inherently flawed, a vessel of corruption. This wasn't about broken bodies. It was about broken souls. The system didn't just inflict physical harm. It shattered their sense of self-worth, convincing them they deserved their suffering. The whispers of rebellion, the rare acts of defiance, only served to highlight the system's terrifying effectiveness. Women fleeing abusive marriages were hunted relentlessly, treated like escaped chattel. Those who resisted arranged marriages faced imprisonment, exile, a life stolen before it truly began. And those who dared to speak out, they were silenced, categorized, and condemned, labeled witches, heretics, madwomen, convenient terms that justified any punishment, any brutality their accusers deemed fit. Even the so-called protections offered to women were a grotesque mockery of justice. Laws against wife-beating weren't about safety. They were about control. They defined the acceptable level of violence, a husband's license to inflict pain, provided he didn't permanently disable his property, ensuring her continued ability to bear children. These weren't protections. They were maintenance instructions for a valuable asset. The intergenerational trauma? Unfathomable. Mothers, brutalized themselves, were forced to prepare their daughters for the same fate, perpetuating a cycle of suffering that spanned centuries. A legacy of pain, passed down through generations, a chilling testament to a system that thrived on control, not compassion. A legacy of pain, passed down through generations, a chilling testament to a system that thrived on control, not compassion. Imagine a world where a woman's worth was measured not by her heart, but by her womb. Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained societal structures can shape the very fabric of a woman's existence? Today, we're going to uncover a hidden history, a brutal truth about the medieval world that will leave you breathless. They weren't merely taught to endure pain. They were conditioned to believe it was their natural state, their rightful burden. Mother's love became a poisoned chalice, a silent scream witnessed in the eyes of daughters destined to repeat the cycle. Each generation inherited not just a name, but a cage of expectations, forged in the fires of patriarchal control. The economics of it all were chillingly simple. Land, power, and legacy, all dictated by the ownership of women. Their bodies, their labor, their very lives were commodities traded for political advantage and economic stability. Marriage wasn't a sacred union. It was a business transaction, a ruthless strategy for consolidating wealth and power. This wasn't collateral damage. It was the foundation upon which their society stood. The suffering of women wasn't an unfortunate side effect. It was the price of order, the cost of maintaining the status quo. And religion, instead of offering solace, provided the moral armor plating for this systematic oppression. The church didn't just condone it, it blessed it. The wedding ceremony, a ritual of submission, transforming a woman into property, not a partner, in the eyes of God. To resist was not only illegal, it was a sin against divine order. The so-called science of the time wasn't neutral, it was a tool of oppression. Medieval medicine portrayed women as inherently inferior, ruled by their irrational emotions and unpredictable bodies. Their supposed weakness justified their exclusion from public life, their confinement to the domestic sphere. Medical texts, far from offering healing, reinforced the narrative of female inferiority, providing a scientific basis for their subjugation. This wasn't just a historical anomaly. It was a deliberate, systematic dismantling of female autonomy. Let's not fall into the trap of thinking this was a relic of the past, a mistake we've long since corrected. The echoes of this dark chapter resonate still. The echoes of this dark chapter resonate still. A chilling legacy, whispered across centuries. Have you ever wondered how deeply the past shapes our present? Today, we're going to uncover a hidden truth about the seemingly distant world of medieval Europe, a truth that continues to cast a long shadow. It wasn't simply a lack of understanding that fueled the brutality of medieval marriage. No, this wasn't some accidental cruelty. It was a meticulously crafted system, a deliberate design by shrewd minds who consciously built a structure of power, prioritizing male dominance above all else, including basic human rights. They knew exactly what they were doing. They understood the consequences. This wasn't just a medieval problem. The cruel reality is that the legal frameworks, social norms, and deeply ingrained beliefs of those times lingered, poisoning generations. Women fought for the right to vote, a battle stretching well into the 20th century. The very concept of marital rape, the violation of a woman within her own marriage, remained shockingly legal in many places until astonishingly recently, the 1970s. And the archaic doctrine of coverture, stripping women of their legal identity, clung to life in some corners of the world until the 1980s. Even now, in our supposedly enlightened age, the ghosts of medieval marriage haunt us. In many nations, women require a male guardian's permission for even the most basic life choices. Travel, work, healthcare. The horrifying practices of honor killings, forced marriages, and female genital mutilation continue to blight lives, a testament to the enduring power of these ancient, misogynistic beliefs. The core issue? The very foundation of medieval marriage, the notion that women are subservient, that their autonomy is a threat, that male violence is somehow acceptable, remains deeply embedded in societies worldwide. This isn't just ancient history, it's a present-day crisis. Understanding this dark past isn't just about academic curiosity. It's about moral responsibility. We must confront the reality of this systemic dehumanization, not to judge our ancestors, but to understand the horrifying ease with which civilized societies can systematically oppress half their population, and to recognize that this capacity for cruelty, this potential for darkness, exists within us all regardless of time or place. And to recognize that this capacity for cruelty, this potential for darkness, exists within us all regardless of time or place. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? But it's a truth we must confront if we're ever going to truly understand history and ourselves. Have you ever wondered about the echoes of the past, the whispers carried on the wind from centuries ago? Today, we're going to uncover a story, a painful truth, about the women of the medieval era. They weren't simply victims. They were warriors, survivors, their spirits unbroken despite the crushing weight of a system designed to silence them. Imagine a life where your body, your mind, your very soul belonged not to you, but to a man, a husband chosen not for love, but for property and power. Their dreams, their aspirations, their innate human dignity, all sacrificed at the altar of a social order that valued stability above all else. Justice, a distant, unattainable star. This wasn't some unavoidable fate, some natural order. It was a conscious choice, a decision made by generations who prioritized tradition, control, and the preservation of a patriarchal system over the basic human rights of women. The wedding bells, those symbols of joy and celebration in our modern world, rang out a different tune then. They told the death knell of female autonomy, marking the beginning of a life stripped of agency, of choice, of self-determination. Their stories, often buried under layers of silence and societal amnesia, are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They remind us that the fight for equality, for justice, for the recognition of inherent human worth, is a constant battle, a struggle that spans centuries. Their suffering wasn't in vain. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of our freedoms and the importance of constant vigilance. It's a call to action, a challenge to ensure that such systematic oppression never again defines our world. We owe it to them, to ourselves, and to future generations to listen to their silenced voices, to learn from their pain, and to build a world where such cruelty is not just unthinkable, but impossible. That we owe it to them, to ourselves, and to future generations to listen to their silenced voices, to learn from their pain, and to build a world where such cruelty is not just unthinkable, but impossible. But how do we do that? How do we prevent history from repeating itself? Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine, a sudden unease, when reading about the past? Today, we're going to uncover a chilling truth. Civilization isn't a guarantee against barbarity. It's a fragile shield, easily shattered. Think about it. We picture the Middle Ages, and images of knights and castles spring to mind. But behind the romanticized facade lurked a brutal reality. Medieval weddings? Not the fairy tale you might imagine. They were often marred by violence, by practices that shock us even today. Why? Because even then, the seeds of cruelty were sown in the fertile ground of misguided beliefs. The greater good, tradition, order, these noble-sounding ideals were twisted and weaponized to justify unthinkable acts. They weren't aberrations. They were systemic. The cruelty wasn't accidental. It was a conscious choice. That's the terrifying lesson. No era, no society is inherently immune to this darkness. The potential for organized cruelty, for the systematic dehumanization of others, exists within us all. It's a shadow lurking beneath the surface of our supposedly progressive world. We see glimpses of it in prejudice, in injustice, in the casual acceptance of suffering. Understanding this isn't about wallowing in despair. It's about recognizing the warning signs. It's about learning to identify the subtle shifts, the insidious creep of brutality disguised as righteousness. It's about actively challenging the narratives that justify cruelty, no matter how appealing they might seem. We must examine the foundations of our own society, the unspoken assumptions that underpin our actions. Are we truly building a world where humanity prevails, or are we unknowingly paving the path for another era of darkness? The choice, as always, is ours.